Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name is Kgosi Segongane, and today, I've been avoiding this topic. I've been avoiding this interview that you see up here. I just watched it today, and I'm like, let me just analyze. For those who haven't got a chance to watch it, or those who haven't got a chance to hear what these people are saying. It was an interview between Tucker Calson. He's a well-known right-wing, right-wing white supremacist in America. He's pro-Trump. He loves Trump so much. He's a right-winger in America. That's how far I can go, and then that should give you an idea of what kind of person that we are dealing with here today. So Tucker Calson was working for Fox News before, and he was fired, and then now he's having a show on X, I believe. Yeah, I think he's having a show on X, and this show, I don't know, I think it's on YouTube as well. So this guy went, Enerst Roets went to Tucker Calson to be interviewed by him, and then he spoke a lot of garbage. He spoke a lot of nonsense that is not even there in this country, and this guy just sits there gullibly, eating this whole thing. So the whole video is like an hour 45 minutes. So we're gonna analyze it up until the end of it. I'm gonna listen and I'm going to stop and we're gonna talk about it. And if you wanna leave the comments below, please do so. All right now, and tell me what you think. Please like, subscribe, and how can I put it? And share the video as well, as much as you can. But before we can go further, we are going to play first our sponsor for today, and then we will take it from there. All right? Don't go away. This show is brought to you by Segongane Medical Services and Clinic. They are a private clinic situated in number 70 Tuffengesgras in Westview, Danville. They specialize on the following: primary health care, ailment diagnosis and treatment, including medication, wound care, family planning, well baby clinic, basic ultrasound, laboratory blood services, treatment of chronic illnesses, treatment and management of patients on ARVs, wellness screening, antenatal clinic, HIV services and counseling. They have a pharmacy on site, and they are doing CCMDD services as well, OHS clinic, circumcision clinic and abortion services. Their cell phone number is 064 548 7176 or 071 422 8576. Again, the address is 70 Tuffengesgras in Westview, Pretoria West in Danville. Cell phone number again is 064 548 7176 or 071 422 8576. Yeah, and we are back, and that is our sponsor for today, Segongane Medical Services and Clinic. They don't take any medical aids; they only take cash for their consultations. But their cash is $350 only, and you get medication separately. But you know what the thing is? Some of the doctors around or clinics will say to you, "No, we're gonna pay only $750, including medicine, and you're gonna get only like Panado or Allergics or some other small medication." But then you've paid a lot of money for small medication, and the service there is beautiful. So take a look, take a visit, pay them a visit, while at the Hotel of 72 Tuffengesgras in Westview, Denver. Now back to the video that you can see up here, the big one, this one, big one here. That is Tucker Calson on your right. If you are watching the screen like this, is on your right, and then that guy is Enerst Roets. Enerst Roets, you remember, he was he was in AfriForum in this country, and he resigned apparently. Since the Trump thing, he resigned. We don't know why he resigned, but then he resigned, and he's no longer doing the AfriForum and solidarity thing. So I don't know what he's doing now. Maybe he's going around the U.S. trying to garner support for this so-called Afrikaner genocide and whatnot. So they were sitting here for an hour 45 minutes talking about how bad it is for white people in this country, and we're going to analyze the video. We're going to play the video and play it, stop it, analyze. Please, Luena, go ahead, send me your comments. Let me know what you think about this one. Please let me know what you think about this one, so that you can be able to know what South Africans are saying. Because what he's saying, this guy Roets, is something else. It's something out of, I don't know what, out of some fiction or some movie where they now Afrikaners who are now victims. Please just take a listen. Listen to this.
So I think for most Americans, sort of news about South Africa ended in 1994. Both literally, we stopped getting a lot of news from the country, but also people's views about it stopped evolving then. That was the year that that apartheid ended, I guess, officially. You had elections. Nelson Mandela is still a hero in the United States, often referred to by politicians. And it's only been, I think, in American media in the past couple of months that stories have come out of South Africa that have a lot of Americans have read that actually the country seems to be falling apart and that the government is kind of genocidally racist.
Yeah.
And then President Trump in the past month has basically said the same thing. And it's shocking to a lot of people, I think, how bad it is and how racist it is, far more than apartheid ever was.
All right, let's first start with that small one. This guy Tucker Calson is saying we are genocidal racist in this country. Genocidal racist in what way? So we are genocidal South African blacks and we are racist as well. Maybe we should try to analyze those two words, genocide and racist. What is a genocide? Systemic extermination of people according to their race. That's what happened to us as black South Africans. We were genocidal. We were killed because we are blacks. We were oppressed because we are blacks. We were not given opportunities because we are blacks. Now let's talk about racism. Racism is the system of dispossession that you dispossess somebody from education to economic, to land ownership, to just everyday basic life. You dispossess that person because of their race. We are not doing that to them. They did it to us. You understand? They did it to us. So I don't understand when Tucker Calson says we are a genocidal and we're actually more racist than we were in apartheid. What happened? We are having 20% of this South African population that is ruling and owning almost the whole economy. All right, 20% of this country, white people, 2 million of them are owning 90% of the economy of this country. How then are we racist towards them in that way? How are we racist, to be honest, to white people? Do we, when we want economic, equality, are we now racist? When we ask for, let's set Lerona on the equal footing with you people, we are now racist? How are we genocidal? Who is white people? My handyman in this studio, in this clinic where I'm running, is white. Why am I not killing him as well? Yeah, why are we not killing them? I just don't understand. How can someone go on international media and tell people that we have been genocidal in this country as black people? Like, it's like whatever happened to us in the past is nothing. We are told to move on. We are told to forget whatever happened to us. We just have to get over it and let's move on. It's in the past. Tell that to the Jews, that they must forget about the Holocaust. Downplay the Holocaust for the Jews. Downplay especially, every other race that has been oppressed in this world, the Red Indians of America, whose Tucker Calson's ancestors took over their land till today. The U.S. is a how can I put this? It's a legal colony. Look at the Aborigines in Australia, in New Zealand, the people in Canada, that these people took, that the British took their countries. They've been told to just keep quiet. It's gone. It's done. Don't look at the blacks in America who have been enslaved ever since, way before Tucker Calson could even be born. Whenever they say anything about reparations, about being done well, no, you're too lazy. Go work. Stop trying to look for handouts and whatnot. But tell the same thing to the Jews, which the U.S. loves with everything. You'll be called an anti-Semite. You'll be deplatformed from YouTube and other platforms. You'll be destroyed. But black people's lives are very cheap in this world. We have a former colonizer, a former whole how can I put this easily? A whole not even a colonizer, but a whole beneficiary of a crime against humanity, sitting in front of another right wing in the US, telling them that nonsense, that no, we're being killed in South Africa, we're being genocided like international, our ill-gotten property is being threatened by these people. And this one just gulps it up, he just gulps it in. He just gulps it in. Which why it's a pity shame. There's going to be a lot of this one point. Like I said, it's like how many minutes? 1 hour 45 minutes that we're going to be listening to. So please leave your comments below. Let's continue.
I'm wondering, since you've just landed from South Africa, you live there, describe the state of the country right now, if you would.
Yeah, well, perhaps I can start with your reference about the 90s, because it's absolutely true. South Africa and America was very involved with the setting up of the political system that we have in South Africa during the 90s. And it was, of course, the end of history era. Everyone is excited about the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the whole world's going to be liberal and democratic, including African countries.
Yes.
And Samuel Huntington actually cautioned against this in 1996, saying, when he wrote The Clash of Civilizations, and he said, don't expect of African leaders and African liberation movements to suddenly become Western when you give them Western constitutions, because they are still African. So they will it's the democratic paradox. They will use democratic institutions to promote non-democratic ends. And that's what we see in South Africa. We have a parliament, we have a very liberal constitution. But if you read the constitution and you compare that to reality in South Africa, it's two completely different worlds. The de facto and the de jure reality in South Africa is irreconcilable. And so what has been happening in South Africa is, firstly, there was this major excitement about the new South Africa, Nelson Mandela, the miracle story. Oprah spoke about this, and Charlize Theron, and everyone. But the reality on ground level was in many ways the opposite. And I think a lot
from the beginning?
Gradually. So they started, for example, with these BEE, as they call it. It's Black Economic Empowerment, which of course has nothing to do with economic empowerment. They started with that in 1996. And so they actually said initially in the 90s that that's the ruling party's strategy. They still call it that, the National Democratic Revolution, which is about using democracy to promote socialist ends.
All right. BEE is not a socialist concept. BEE is simply saying Black Economic Empowerment, meaning Black people will now be part of the economy. Enerst. You know it. You are lying to him, and he's just swallowing your lies. BEE simply means Black Economic Empowerment, because the economy was in the hands of other people for a long time. Go to our JSE now, Mr. Calson, and check how many white companies are there. One family has a whole wealth that is for the whole GDP of this country, for goodness sakes. One family. Okay? One family. I'm not saying one family. There's a lot of them. Oppenheimers, Ruperts, you can name them. They've got enough wealth for the GDP of this country. Their companies are all over the place. All right, Black people are just being put into the mainstream economy as well, for them to share in the wealth of this country. We didn't say if only we were like Zimbabwe, we said, listen, get out, we are done, go, we'll see you later. Then yes, we could say something like that. But we said, let us share this economy and this country together. Let us work together to make sure that South Africa becomes a progressive country, all of us. That's why the Freedom Charter, even for us Black people, to be honest, is actually a sellout document, because it says, the first line, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, both Black and white. It's not true. South Africa belongs to Black people. You came here, you found us. You can write your own histories by saying, oh, okay, we found a Khoi and a son. Nah. That is in your head. There's nothing like a Khoi and son. There's only the Bushmen who's in the Kalahari now. But the Khoi and son that you found in the Cape, you didn't find anybody else, but you found them. That is a lie. Okay? So the BE thing was never about communism. BE, communism, I remember when I was doing history in school, communism was more of collectivization, that the state owns everything. You guys work for the state. BE has never said. BE said, okay, listen, in all your big white companies, before you can get any contract with the state, you need to have a Black woman, which is very fair. You need to have a disabled person. You need to have a Black shareholding so that people can be empowered, not to give them handouts. But if you are a contractor, you are building something, go get a small Black emerging SMME or small micro enterprise and partner with it in a joint venture for them to be able to make money as well, for them to be able to be empowered as well. That's what BE was all about. Do you understand? So what they did, these white people, was to take all the ANC elites, I'm not going to lie about that one, and capture the ANC like that. That's why BE does not have much meaning in this country anymore. Because only people who got that BE thing was the only one who was connected to the ruling party itself. Because they were trying to buy themselves a president, they were trying to buy themselves votes, they were trying to buy themselves people. That one day they should have people in their corner if the rest of the country said, no, this is enough. But he mustn't lie and say this is about, it's not about communism. It was never about communism. It was about empowering black people that he knows. He knows exactly. He knows, Jorge. They took everything from us. You know, but Tucker Calson must just do themselves a favor, guys, and just leave the US and come to this country and see what is happening. And look at where he, Enerst Roets, is staying. Look at the neighborhood where he's staying, and look at where Mandela came from, and look at the whole province of Eastern Cape. You can't blame 30 years on the ANC on that one. That's completely nonsense, because ANC did not, and I'm going to repeat this, did not create the poverty we are in today. His people did. His government that his father voted for and fought for, they did. So BE was never about communism, Tucker. BE was about helping black people to be part of the economy that they've been excluded from systematically by law, not by choice. It's not like you are saying, hey, who wants to own a multi-million rent business? And black people said, no, we are fine. We'll just be working for you. And white people said, no, yeah, I'm here. Let me go. I want that company. Listen, who wants to stay in a suburb? Black people, no, we want to stay in a township where there's no roads, there's no sanitation. In your language, Tucker, is called the ghetto in America, where you place black people. Yeah. So here you call them townships. No, we want to stay in these dusty places with no tarred roads and no running water, no nothing, because we are just black. And these ones say, oh yeah, now I live in a suburb, take me there. They can take them to, around here, it's Danville, Proclamation Hill, and the rest. No. There was a system called apartheid in this country that made sure that no black person will own any property, no black person will own any land, no black person will own any means of production. It was a system put down by law. We were forbidden. We were removed from our places and placed into those dusty townships. They even created homelands to drive us out from the rich parts of the country, for them to own mines. They drove us out from those. They created homelands, Botswana, Transkei, Venda, and Ciskei, to put us there. They even created Lesotho and Swaziland as countries within South Africa, just to get us out of there. So this person is lying. And he's lying with a very straight face. Hence, he can't come back to the country, because he knows that whatever he said there was treason. Comment below. Tell me if I'm saying what I'm saying now is not true or is a lie. Comment below. Let's continue.
And so the revolution, they say, it goes in two phases. The first phase is present yourself as being liberal and democratic and get...
Now, let's talk about this revolution he's talking about. The revolution is not about destroying anything. Revolution is about changing everything from the grassroots. Revolution is the systematically change of everything from ground up. That is revolution. It's not about destroying anything, because the word revolution is like we are now going to go up in arms and burn things. No. It's about changing the status quo. It's about destroying each and everything that made some people very comfortable and other people not very comfortable. That is the revolution we're talking about. You're not talking about killing anybody, taking anybody's land and do whatever. It's just to make sure that people will live together. Like Freedom Shelter said, South Africa belongs to all, black and white.
Support, especially international support and local, and then use multi-party democracy as a way of promoting the goals of taking the country down the road to socialism. And so recently they even went as far as publishing a document saying, we are now ready for the second phase of the revolution. We now have power, we have control of the state, we now need to use this to become much more aggressive in our socialist policies. And we're seeing this in a plethora of new laws all of a sudden in South Africa.
South Africa is not a socialist country. South Africa is a capitalist country. All right? People that doesn't understand this country well, please listen to me. South Africa is not a socialist country. There's no socialist policy. So the South African Communist Party is the smallest we have in this country. ANC is mostly capitalist. 90% capitalist, free market. That's why the DA joined them to form the GNU. So South Africa is not a socialist country in any shape or form. It's a lie. There's no policy in this country of called collectivization. Somebody must just go and check what collectivization did to the USSR. when they're introducing communism there. Is when the state owns everything and you guys are working for the state. Or you don't even own your own farm, but you and the workers, you own and you share it, but then you sell to the state will pay you. That is what we call collectivization. That is a communist policy. The problem is but America, they are so afraid of the word communism that they will, whatever thing, keywords in the US is this: terrorist, terrorist, communism, communist or communism. These three. In America, there is the terror meter. You must understand, people are living in fear in the US. Like there's a terror meter. Ooh, there's a terror meter. Somewhere, somehow they know. You understand? So people must stop lying like this man.
Which I think it's gotten to the point where it's just not possible to maintain the view that people have had of South Africa for the last few decades and look at what's currently happening in South Africa. It's two completely different worlds. And hopefully, or happily at least, a lot of people are starting to wake up to this.
So you said Samuel Huntington wrote that in 1996, 2 years after the election. I kind of thought that from day one, simply because I knew people there, and I was more familiar with the details of the Mandelas.
Yes.
But I think most Americans, I don't think, had any idea. Like, what was Nelson Mandela on Robben Island for? What was he in prison for?
Well,
for being black, or was there another reason?
Well, literally. So I have children, and they are taught in schools, and the government prescribes what children.
What kind of a journalist doesn't know what Mandela was in jail for? Like Tucker Calson, if he calls himself a journalist, he should know the history of this country. And you must listen to the answer of this boy. What this boy is saying, like, where's I wanted to break something in here, but Tucker Calson is supposed to be a journalist, guys. He's supposed to be, investigative. Whenever he doesn't even know what Mandela went to prison for. How's that possible? How is that possible? And then this person, when he responds, you must listen to that. It's total garbage. Yeah, I don't want to say stuff. It's total garbage. Whatever he says, this girl. Sorry, this guy. Yeah, this girl. It's total garbage. Listen to this answer.
Children should learn in history. And so the official version is he went to prison because he was a good leader, and the
How? He went to prison because he was a good leader and the government didn't like it. That's the official, what his kids taught in school. Yeah, listen.
Government didn't like that. I should say that he certainly was the best that the ANC has ever had to offer.
Yes.
But the reason why he went to prison is because they started Umkhonto we Sizwe, which was the military wing of the ANC, which became involved with military actions in South Africa with an attempt to overthrow the government. And they actually, and this is I'm quoting from the ANC's own policy documents that's on their own website. So they had this operation when they started, which was used in the Rivonia trial against Nelson Mandela. It was a strategy called Operation Mayibuye, and the slogan of this operation was, "Shamelessly we shall attack the weak, and shamelessly we shall flee from the strong."
Okay. Okay, let's talk about this thing, Mandela was not sent to prison because, and I want to speak English to you. Mandela was not sent to prison, and the other Rivonia trialists, Jacob Zuma and the rest of them, who went to prison, they were never sent because they created Umkhonto we Sizwe. Umkhonto we Sizwe was created after. Like, I can understand. Umkhonto we Sizwe was not even in the country. It was out in other neighboring countries like Zambia and others. It was a military wing of the ANC, just like you, Tucker Calson's ancestors who were in the South, who were fighting the North. Hello, history. You had American Civil War, isn't it? Yeah, where the white Southerners who wanted to keep slavery was fighting the Northern white trying to abolish slavery. It's the same thing. Why then is it now being seen as this bad thing? It was not even in a country. Umkhonto we Sizwe was created outside South Africa to try to, because they were trying to, because Mandela said something in his last interview before he was arrested. He said, it is pointless for us to continue negotiating with a government that will only reply by military force and killing. So we're going to have to take up the whole same thing and do the same thing as well. Because it's pointless for us to be doing that. Very pointless. Because we are talking to a government that responds with killing and destruction. Remember 1976? The kids were saying no to Africans. 65, Sharpeville massacre, when people were shot in the back while fleeing by the police because they didn't want to use passbooks. I don't know what you call them in identity card in the US, but here in South Africa, before we had small identity cards the size of a bank card, we had these huge books that only black people were forced to carry. White people had small little green ID cards, ID books, nice ones that we got after democracy. But we were given these huge books that you have to carry. And even a white child, himself, Enerst Roets, could come to my father and say, hey, Kafor, give me that book, where's your pass? And my father had to comply because he was white. Whether policeman or not, he's not telling you the real thing. He's not telling you the real thing. Now comes to Operation Maibuya. Maibuya operation was when they were sabotaging strategic opponents or targets in the country. They were targeting things like railway lines, one. They were targeting things like power lines, power cables, that the country must be ungovernable. They never planted bombs in white suburbs. They never planted bombs in anywhere where it's commercial, where there's shops, where they know that black people will be there. It's a lie. There's only one incident that the bomb went off in a shop in Jamestown. One incident only. I don't know who planted it there. Because the South African intelligence had this goal of always trying to undermine the struggle. And then they do something and then it was blamed on the struggle. That, you see, it's them. My buoy was to target. I was even saying, why not just target white suburbs? But no. We're not in a business of killing people. We're in a business of sabotaging a system of government in South Africa. So they were targeting railway lines so that there mustn't be any goods moving around South Africa. He must tell the truth. They were targeting power lines, like power cables, that there mustn't be light in this country for whites. Because remember, us as the blacks didn't have electricity at that time. Only electricity was given to white people as part of their privilege. We were using candles. I finished my matric, which is grade 12, on a candle. The only time we had electricity in my house at home back in Pretoria in Northwest was in 96, 2 years after elections, when I was doing my matric. So that was the only systematic targets that my buoy did. This whole thing of fleeing from the strong and then killing the weak, that's nonsense. There's nothing like that.
So those were the circumstances in the 1960s.
Pretty noble policy statement there. We'll attack the weak and flee from the strong.
Yeah, and it's still on their website. You can find it there. So that was an attempt at an armed uprising. Now, we can talk about everything that was wrong with the previous political system in South Africa, and there was a lot wrong. But it's simply...
A good journalist will ask him, what was that wrong? When you are a journalist and you sit there and you are biased, you won't ask questions like when you say what was wrong, You specifically give us the details of what was wrong. Then she could have told him, okay, hey, this. But then he knows he was going to put him on the spot. Because remember, the whole point of this interview was never about the truth. It was about, how can I put it? It was about promoting a certain agenda to Trump and to the world. To say, oh, you see, what's it mean? Oh, it's so terrible. My goodness. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's continue.
Not the case that he went to prison for being a good leader.
Well, I think that most people would acknowledge a distinction between military action, which is, a fight, a war, a battle between militaries, and attacks on civilians, which is something we call terrorism.
Yes. So in 1985, the ANC had a conference in Kabwe in Zambia, and they took a formal decision that in their so-called military operations, they would not differentiate between hard and soft targets. So it was officially a policy that says we can kill innocent people. And a lot of innocent people died in the political violence in the run-up to 1994, and 90% of the people who died were black South Africans.
Right.
It was...
but non-combatants, women, children.
Yeah, women and children.
Passers-by, people had nothing.
That's another lie. What happened in this country, Tucker Calson, was this. Political violence in the 80s was started by the apartheid government. They were, after Mandela was released from prison in 1990, brother, and even way before then, there was political killing in this country because people, the government of this country was arming the IFP, which is Inkatha Freedom Party. It was another party, black party, I can say, but they were arming them to kill ANC members in this country. He's lying, this person. They were arming them. I remember the leader of that time was Mzotol. God rest his soul. Yeah. He said to us that the reason why he left that kind of operation was because he could see what he saw: white soldiers coming to the hostel with crates of pangas, machetes, we call them machetes in America, bombs and guns and all manner of anything. And he saw that this is instruments that are going to be used by me to kill my own brother. Whether I don't care whether they belong to the IFP, I don't care whether they belong to whatever, but that is my brother that I'm going to be killing. So that's when he left. He stopped. He must search the document. I'm going to do the documentary thing one day. You guys must listen and see. So there was no political killing that was done by the ANC against black people. It was government of South Africa was doing that, sir. Your guest must tell the truth. Hori, the political killings in this country was not about the ANC. The ANC was not. How can the ANC want to liberate us and still target us? Blatantly, he lied.
Nothing to do with anything.
Yes, especially.
And so during that time that Mandela was in prison, I'm 55, so I remember this very, very well. His wife was effectively his spokesman, Winnie Mandela.
Yeah.
And she was lionized in the United States. She was a hero. She was the mother of an emerging nation, a woman of peace and decency, really a transcendent figure, a holy figure. And then it turned out that actually she was a murderer who had, burned to death or supervised the murder of a bunch of different people. Tell us about that.
Yes. So let me firstly say that I have a lot of respect for Nelson Mandela. I think in terms of...
Winnie Mandela was never a murderer. He was painted like that by the apartheid government and by the sympathizers of apartheid. She was never a murderer. She didn't kill anyone. She was never found guilty of anything. She died, never gone to prison for that. She was a mother of the nation. She was a liberator. She was Mandela's voice when he was in prison. All those years, ANC was kept alive by that woman. They should worship at her feet. They should worship at her grave. Every single day, they should go in there and worship and say, "We thank you, Mama." Because that's what she did. That's the kind of person she did. She sacrificed all her life to make sure that we as South Africans were where we are today. And the thanks that they get is this ones. So Winnie Mandela was never a terrorist, was never a murderer. She didn't kill anyone. She was never convicted of any crime. Now this one's going to talk about the necklacing. Listen to this one.
Of his efforts and as I say, I think he's the best the ANC has ever had to offer. Winnie Mandela, his wife, not so.
The reason why he's saying Mandela was the best is because Mandela forgave them on our behalf and told us to accept them the way they are. They thought we were going to take over everything like, everybody else. I mean, anywhere else where there was a colony, the colony left and then we took over the country, literally took over the country. So they thought we were going to do that. So Mandela said, no, guys, let's not do that, please. You know what, let's just have this rainbow nation, reconcile, and then be okay. It's okay, please, let's do that. And then that's why they love him so much, because he gave them a slap on the wrist. You're naughty gay, naughty little kid. After a child bombed the house and you go, don't stop being so naughty. You're so naughty, Wena. You're not supposed to do this. That's what Mandela did. That's why they love him so much. That's why they hate everybody else who speaks a different language, like Kgosi and others, who said, no, we cannot accept this. Kgosi was weeping. He said he was weeping when the armed struggle was called off. He was weeping when he remembers the blood of his brothers, the blood of his sisters and brothers, which was flowing like a river. One day I'm going to have that his interview, and I'm gonna put it here one day. You guys can be able to, you know, he was crying because the armed struggle was called Max Mandela, that they loved so much, sold us out and said, let the armed struggle be over. We continue with these negotiations and whatnot and whatnot and whatnot. That's why they love him so much.
So much. So she famously, I mean, she's been involved with a lot of things, including what was called the Mandela Football Club.
Yes.
Which was a gang that was involved with violence and killings of innocent people. And she famously said at a political rally with...
How many people have been killed by Mandela Football Club? Another lie by Ntate Roets, Enerst Roets. Mandela Football Club never killed anybody. Yes, they were implicated with the death of Stompie Seipei, who was an apartheid little spy for the police. It was proven that's why he was murdered by whoever. One person was found in that club that killed him. Not the whole club killed him. One person was found and he was found guilty and he went to jail for. Winnie Mandela was never charged. He was charged, but he was acquitted because there was no evidence linking her to that. People were just trying to link into this thing because of, you know, it's her. So put her in there. This Mandela was not killing anyone. They were just a bodyguards for Winnie Mandela because she was now a target. They had to protect her. She was a target for the system. She was a target for anybody else who wanted to take her out. But now she was made a villain because of Mandela, because she remember she was still having that radicalness inside her. But then she was made a villain by the apartheid government. So she had to find people that were going to protect her. And actually, there's actually a good thing, because if not, we'll be speaking another thing now.
With our necklaces and our matches, we will liberate this country.
Yes.
Which, of course, is a reference to the necklace murders, which was very popular in South Africa and still happens in South Africa.
He's lying. We don't necklace people anymore. People who are necklaced in this country were those police informant. You know, we're in the middle of a war. And then the system that we are fighting have infiltrated inside us, among us. There are people that are infiltrating the system, you know, that are coming in and trying to, you know, destabilize whatever efforts you're trying to make. This person comes and sings with us, hi, do whatever, all those chants, and then all of a sudden, one of us gets killed or gets arrested. Because this boy or this girl went and spoke to the police and listen, Kgosi and who were in that meeting. So that's why people were taught a lesson. It was not a good thing to do, but it was a necessary thing to do. Because we are trying to fight a system that they led themselves to be used by. Because they were given money or they were given whatever incentive. So there's no killing of people necklaces now, Enerst, in this day and age. You are lying.
When you take a rubber tire, you fill it with petrol or gasoline, and you put it around someone's neck so that it's bound around their arms, and you set it on fire, and then you stone that person while he's burning to death. And that happened. There were, I think, 500 or 700 people were killed like that during political violence in South Africa, and she encouraged this. Initially, she denied it, and then it came out that it was recorded of her saying this. So yes, it's very...
Winnie Mandela never denied anything. Yes, he said, with our necklaces and our matches, we will liberate this country. Simply meaning, those that have been sent here amongst us to infiltrate us will be dealt with. And they won't stop us from doing what we're doing. She never denied that. She never denied that.
Bizarre that someone like Winnie Mandela is a hero today.
And was a hero then. And so that, to me, was a sign that these are not, you know, liberators, that they're oppressors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so...
Okay, Tucker knows nothing about our country's history. He doesn't even know what Mandela went to prison for. So when he gets told that Mandela was actually an oppressor, not a liberator, what is he talking about? And this fool is laughing instead of saying, no, he was actually liberated, because we were really putting our boot on these people's necks. That's what I'm saying in the beginning of this video, that, you know, when two, how can I put this so nicely? When two rednecks and white supremacists meet, that's what is born. This is exactly what it's born in between, that unholy relationship. Okay?
But no one in the West wanted to think that. It was like a really simple tale of white oppression of noble black people, and by definition, the black people. There were oppressed black people, of course, and there were noble black people, but the leadership always struck me as evil.
Yes, so there were some better and some worse people in the leadership. I think an important component here that is very well documented, it's not a secret, but a lot of people don't seem to want to know this or recognize this, is the very strong alliance that the ANC has always had and still has with the South African Communist Party, and the extent to which they were supported not just by the Soviet Union, also by the Vietnamese and by Mao Zedong as well, implementing what they call the People's War strategy that they got from Mao Zedong.
What's common about all those countries that they were all oppressed? Okay, that's what's common. China was colonized by Britain. Vietnam was colonized by Britain as well. All those countries had one thing in common: they were all oppressed, and they were fighting for their own liberation and independence from these people from Europe. That is a fact.
So yes, it was very much the ANC saw themselves as being the African or South African frontier of promoting a socialist or a communist revolution.
So how did it turn out?
Well, if you mean in terms of where we are today.
Let's just follow different threads. So let's just start with, I don't know, technology and infrastructure. What did in 1993? South Africa was famously the most prosperous society in Africa by far, right? And among the most prosperous in the world, correct? They had nuclear weapons in South Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it like now, 30 years later?
Well, the reality is that virtually every sphere of society is collapsing, with the exception of taxation, of course, and tax collection. That's still very, very efficient. Maybe I can explain it this way. So America has a somewhat skewed tax system with, if my information is correct, about 85% of income tax in America is paid by about 10% of the people.
I think that's correct.
So 1 in 10. In South Africa, 85% of income tax is paid by 1 in 30 people. So it's a very small number of people.
It's because those people still hold the economy of the country. They still hold the means of production in this country. They still basically own everything. So that is why they will do that. So I don't know what is he trying to analyze there, this woman.
A very small portion of society that pays tax, that is heavily taxed. And then about almost half of the population in South Africa get money from the government in the form of social grants. If you add government employees, conservative estimates say that 50% of...
The question will be that why is half of the people in this country getting social grants? It's because of the system of poverty that we were put in as black people. That is why people in this country, that much number, is getting social grants. Not because they didn't want to work, not because they didn't, because the system that they thrived on, these ones, put us there.
People in South Africa get money from the government. Some estimates say it's up to 60% of adults, voting age adults, get money from the government each year. So then this money, of course, is then used. It's given out as social grants, but what's left is used to set up these programs that are actively discriminating against taxpayers. There are so many examples. One of the most recent ones is this Blacks Only Fund that the government has set up, whereby they give money to black entrepreneurs exclusively. So
that is a lie. There's nothing. I can't even have a name for it. What is this black fund that is only funding black companies? And by the way, in South Africa, Mr. Calson, when we talk about black, we talk about Africans like me, brown skin, black skin. We talk about coloreds. Those are the mixed race between a black and a white person, and Indians. Okay? So those are the three classes of black people in this country. So he must not only want you to believe that when they say black, they speak about me. They speak about me, a colored person, and an Indian. Three of us. Okay? So there's no black fund somewhere that is funding exclusively black people. I haven't seen it. Maybe somebody can just show me now on the comments that what is that black fund that is being called. He can't even say the name because there's nothing like that.
So this is happening. And then on top of that, so after you spend your tax money to fund these government programs that are discriminating against you, you have to spend what is left to do the things that the government was supposed to be doing. So the classical definition of a government is that it should protect life, liberty, and property. The classical liberal view, we're a bit Ciceronian, so we think a government has to do more than that. But if we use those three things, the government's not protecting our lives. There's about, if this interview that we're about to have is 2 hours, there will be about 7 murders in South Africa in this time. Government does not protect liberty. It's actively targeting schools of minority communities, actively denying the identity and the right.
Let's talk about these so-called schools of minorities. Mr. Calson, much as you don't know nothing about this country, let me just enlighten you about what he means about schools of minorities. They are trying to keep schools Africans only, meaning only white kids can go there. No other race must attend with their kids. They are trying to have government schools to be exclusively white and with white teachers, white kids only. There's no minority school that any minority has built for themselves and you are targeting them. He's speaking about the very public government-owned schools that were built by their government in their white communities, that they must only remain exclusively white and Africans. That's what we call apartheid, brother. That's what we call in your country segregation. Okay? Segregation, where people are divided by the color of their skin. He is talking about that. There is nothing, when he talks about identity of minority rights, he's speaking about them trying to build a little country within this country for them only. No other race must enter there. They've got Orania now in the Northern Cape. That's where only Afrikaans, white people are staying and accepted as residents. It's a so-called little country inside South Africa being led by Mandela to happen up until today. So there is no right. We don't say to them they mustn't come into the same bank with us like they did. We don't say they mustn't use the same transportation as we did. We are not saying they mustn't use any facilities like they did. In apartheid was like saying you can't sit in the same bench. There were signs, whites only this part, blacks this side. It's the same as in the US where there's colored and whatever. The same thing that he wants. There's no targeting of any minority right. These people, the problem is that when this whole thing started, nothing of theirs was touched. Nothing. Their wealth, their companies, their houses, their whatever was left like for 30 years. And you've been having this thing called willing buyer, willing seller, where people say, listen, you've got so much land, you're not even using it. Give it to us with this price, and we can be able to use it for other things like schools and clinics and houses for people who doesn't have. Hence, we have so many squatter camps in this country. Squatter camps, in your simple language in English, is a shanty town. It's how can I put squatter? Just Google squatter, Mr. Taga, you'll know what I'm talking about. Do you understand? So there's no targeting of minority rights. There's no targeting of anything. No one's targeting these people. They are lying. They are lying. They still have their own privilege. They still have their own rights. They still have their own money. They still have their own everything. This person himself is a rich man sitting in front of you. He's rich not because of his hard work, but because of this lie that he has been propagating when he was in the AfriForum. He stays in a very nice mansion, I'm sure, in a very safe neighborhood somewhere. He doesn't know how to live in a township where there's no water or sanitation.
Rights of minority communities, and it's certainly not protecting property. It's actively involved with the program to empower the government to expropriate private property without compensation.
There was never a government policy saying we're going to target property. It's land expropriation with no compensation. It's not property. Property is a house, for goodness sakes. Property is a company. It's a building. We're talking about arable land that is sitting there doing nothing. That people need houses. People need where to, like new neighborhoods. People must be taken out from townships and be put a place where it's supposed to be, a nice place. We are talking about that land. And yes, farmland as well, because you can't own 3, 5, 6 farms alone. And then you say, no, my family bought. They didn't buy it. They took it by force. So, and Again, land redistribution in this country started by saying people who were removed from their land forcefully, they must be returned to that land again. But that time is already suburbs of white people, because Lady Selborne here in Pretoria North, Sophia Town, me from Mafikeng to say, when Pretoria was created, my parents were forcefully removed from Lichtenberg area, Makweteng. They were taken to Ituseng, and West Suburbs was built there for white people. So that land we needed back, and without compensation, yes. We are unapologetic about that, unfortunately.
So, and then we have to use the money that is left to pay for our own private security, to become involved with organizations, to fulfill the things that the government was supposed to be doing with the tax money that we paid in the first place.
One of the reasons that I find this story so fascinating is not simply because, it's like the classical, irony of history. This, group comes in with one aim and then achieves exactly the opposite. We're going to have we're going to end racism and then make racism much worse. But also because they have gone about it in a way that's almost like American, with the same language, the same diversity
absolutely.
is our strength, kind of sloganeering, and it's had the same result, which is to basically kill whites. And I mean, that's just true. And
there is no slogan that says kill whites in that day, Tucker. There's no racism that this government is doing to anyone, especially white people. These people are having the most time of their lives. They're getting enough free airtime from you. They're getting enough free airtime from Trump. They are now victims of their own doing. There is no way that we are targeting white people in this country. There is no target of any white person in this country. It's a lie. There is nothing like that. There's no targeting of any white person here. No targeting of any property. No targeting of any schools. We are just crying for equality. Let us be equal with you people for once. Let my child come and get the same education as your child does. What's so bad about that? Let me come into the same neighborhood and stay with you, next to you, and do my own job wherever. But let me stay in a nice neighborhood. What is wrong with that? Let me be as rich, generationally rich and wealthy as your parents did for you. Let me build that wealth for my family as well. What is wrong with that? Equality scares them to death, because they think that if we are equal to these people, I'm telling you now, we are done for. We cannot be. We are taught that we are superior. We are supposed to be up there. We are superior. We cannot be equal to these people. They are lower than us. So he's lying to you again.
And I wonder if you see that. It's almost like you imported our kind of intellectual class framework for this project.
No, that's absolutely the case. So there's a theory. There was this video that just went viral on social media of this guy talking about how white people are subhuman and all of that. And they get, this is taught at universities in South Africa. There's a theory called Azania critical theory. Azania is a Pan-African word for South Africa. And they actually get this from Americans like Robin DiAngelo.
But when you call black people monkeys and subhuman, what's wrong with that? With us quoting your own studies, that where does Neanderthals come from? Neanderthals come from this. Do you understand? We are quoting your own study, Mr. Roets, your own white study that teaches us about where Neanderthals, your people, come from the European Caucasian mountains. So if it says that you are inferior to other races, accept it. Once as you have been teaching out to other people, telling them that we are monkeys, we are inferior, our IQ is very low. So we accepted that. We accepted that. Do you understand? So learn to take it on the chin as well, sir. Please.
So who's this? Ibrahim X. Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, these people. They get it from them, and then they put an African flavor on it, which essentially boils down to a theory that justifies the targeting and extermination of the white minority. And so the theory, to summarize, goes more or less like this. There's an African term called Ubuntu, which means
there is no extermination of targeting extermination of any one person. Here he is. He's still alive, and he doesn't even have bodyguards. Why can't we kill him and exterminate him? But Tucker Calson, they're supposed to be asking questions like that. But I mean, come on, man. When you're saying there's systematic extermination, why are you still alive? Targeting and killing of white people. Why are you still alive? Why is your family still alive? Why can't I see you with bodyguards around you protecting you because you might just be killed anyway? You are.
Brotherliness, or it's about your internal humanity. It's a Zulu term. And the theory goes that white people are incapable of having Ubuntu. But Ubuntu is the essence of humanity. So if you don't have it, you're not truly human.
Yeah, you don't have Ubuntu because if you had, you would have created apartheid and oppressed us so much and enslaved us. Ubuntu means I can share my plate of food with you. You did not even want my mother, who was a maid in your father's house, to eat on the same table with you guys. You could have a dog's, my mother would tell us stories. You could have a dog's plate on the table, but her plate as a human being was washed outside. They would not allow us to mix with them. So that's not Ubuntu, brother. You don't have that. You don't have humanity, because if you had, you would not oppress our people as much as you did. You would not create apartheid and make us feel like we are subhuman in your own homes. You wouldn't let us stay in townships with no running water, no nothing, no sanitation, using bucket system to relieve ourselves. But you're staying in suburbs with flushing toilets, tarred roads, electricity, while we were burning in townships, using coal, getting TB, using paraffin, killing our kids. And then you call yourself that you got an Ubuntu. You don't have Ubuntu, Shem. Because Ubuntu says, I'm going to take care of my neighbor. The same as I take care of me, myself.
So it boils down, the logical conclusion is that if you kill a white person, then you did not actually commit murder. So this is not widely believed in South Africa, but this is taught at universities by university professors, and it's certainly believed by radical elements.
It's a predicate for genocide. I mean, it's always the same in we're watching it in parts of the world now. They're not fully human, right? So we can kill them because they're fully human. Then it's of course a grave sin to kill them.
Yeah.
So can we talk about like that with Mr. Calson? Can we talk about the Jews like that? What they're doing to Palestinians? Because they are systematically targeting and destroying them, like as we speak.
Well, we've always been saying that there's not a genocide in South Africa, looking at what happened in Rwanda and so forth. It's not the same thing. But it is very alarming to look at some of these claims that are being made and to compare that to what was made in Rwanda.
Every country, and genocide broadly defined, an attempt to eliminate a group of people on the basis of their race or ethnicity.
Yeah, and we have these political parties chanting, I mean, you've seen this, you've reported on this, chanting, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, to a stadium filled with people. And it's not just rhetoric, so they would say, no, it's just a metaphor. But it's preceded by a speech about how white people are criminals and should be treated like criminals, how everything they have is illegitimate and stolen, in which people...
Lies. There is no rally that said that people are criminals, they should be treated like criminals. Kill the Boer, kill the farmer is a chant that we talk about with the system of government we had before 94, Mr. Calson. We were talking about the system of government we had before 94, not an individual white person. Not an individual white person. But we are talking about a system of apartheid that was there and was represented by these people. We did not kill them. We are trying to dismantle that system. Hence, the court of law never saw it as hate speech, because it's not hate speech. We are not saying individual. Why are we not killing him and his family? That is the question you should be asking as a credible journalist. You should be asking, why are they not killing you then? If they were busy killing some, hey, man.
People are encouraged to go and invade their farms and so forth, and then they chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, and they make these...
And no one has ever encouraged anyone to go and invade a farm. That's a lie. Malema said people can occupy unoccupied land if they find and if they need a place to stay. They can do that. Because people are staying like sardines. Like how do you call sardines in America? Tuna. Tuna fish inside little packed in like a number of them in a small tin. Yeah.
Hand gestures. Of course, the Boer is a reference to the Afrikaner people. But
the Boer was never referring to Afrikaner people. You should have been killed, all of you, by now, if this was the case. Most of you should be dead by now. I mean, you should be saying how many white people are left in South Africa since 94. It should be from 2 million to maybe 500,000. But they're still 2 million. They're still going up. Boere does not mean a person. Boere, kill the boer, kill the farmer, it's kill the system. Because the system was controlled by boers.
Reality is also that the farmers are being attacked and killed on their farms. So it's not just a metaphor. And our attempts at researching this has found that there's an increase in farm attacks when the political climate becomes...
Farm attacks are happening because it's crime. These farmers, they hire illegal Zimbabweans and they don't pay them. And these people retaliate. And there's a lot of cases where white farm wives were killing their husbands. He doesn't talk about those ones. It's crime. It's not a genocide. It's not a targeted killing. It's crime. People are being killed on their farms because of the people that they hired. They hired cheap labor. That cheap labor showed them flames. It's not my fault. That you rather go and get an illegal immigrant to come and work in a farm instead of getting a South African that you're going to have to pay compensation, fair compensation for. You're going to have to do medical aid for them. But then because they wanted cheap labor, they went and got cheap labor from Zimbabwe, and when they don't pay them, they murder them.
Heated or warmer, and these type of statements are made in a way that's highly publicized, you do get an increase in farm attacks, and it's very brutal and very horrific farm attacks that we see.
So the farm attacks are attacks against white farmers,
not exclusively white farmers, but it's attacks against farmers in South Africa, of which the majority is white.
Right. Okay.
Did you guys catch that? Did you guys catch that? Farmers are white. No. It not exclusively. It is exclusively. Not all of them are white, but most of them are white. Yeah.
So this has been going on a long time. I think it's been well documented. I believe you wrote a book about it,
yes,
which has become very sold a lot of copies on Amazon. I noticed.
Yes.
And so none of this is like a secret. And all of it's verifiable because, dead people are pretty easy to track because they're dead.
Yeah, so we have the names of the people who've been murdered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the United States, the country that inspired the revolution that you're living through, our media have ignored that and then gone beyond ignoring it to attack anyone who brings it up as a, quote, white supremacist.
Yeah, well, I could tell you so many stories about this. So
Please do.
For example, I was on your show a few years ago to talk about the farm murders and the extent to which we were attacked by American media as a result of that. I had someone from CNN come see me in my office in Pretoria and to interview me about farm attacks. And the entire interview was about you. So he would put things to me and say, did you know Tucker Calson said the following? Do you agree with this statement? And did you know that Donald Trump said this? And are you comfortable with this? And so I paused him at one stage and I said, what are we doing? I thought we were here to talk about farm murders and what's happening in South Africa. But the argument was that because Trump made that comment about farm murders in 2018, it has to be a non-existing issue because Trump is a liar and everything he says is false. And the same with you, because you spoke about it, that means that the problem doesn't exist. And we have to prove that it doesn't exist in order to get to you.
Well, not only doesn't it exist, you're not allowed to complain about it existing.
Yes, yes.
It's somehow a moral crime to notice and to not like it when people are murdered for the color of their skin.
It's bizarre. It's
well, it's not bizarre. They're telegraphing genocidal intent when they're telling you, no, you're not getting killed, and yes, it's a good thing that you are.
Yes, and no, you're not getting killed.
What are they saying?
Yeah, it's no, you're not getting killed, and if you are, you deserve it.
Right.
Because of a variety of things, because the attackers are poor, or because remember all the horrible things that white people have done in South Africa and outside of South Africa. So there's always a justification. And so another example.
Is it a lie? With that justification, is it a lie? Huh? If people say we want my kids to attend the same school as your kids, that was created by apartheid for you only, and you say no, is that the right thing to do, Mr. Roets?
Just in 2018, again, after you spoke about this and after Trump spoke about this, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, came to America and he spoke at an event in New York, and he said, there are no killings of farmers in South Africa. And he just flat out denied the existence of the problem. And he said this on an international platform. He said it's not happening. It's not true. And
Because it's not happening as you guys put it, Mr. Roets. It's not happening as you guys put it. You put it as if, every single day a farmer is being shot or whatever. It's isolated incidents. Isolated here and there and there and there and there. It's not every single day. Like, every morning we wake up to, 6 farmers were killed yesterday. No. Hence, the president said to them, there's no farm killings in South Africa. There is no farm killings. There's just, pockets of crime that we are so used to, More black people are being killed in this country than white people, believe you me.
The worst of it all was how the media knew this was wrong, especially mainstream media in South Africa. They knew that it's not true, and so they immediately rushed to his defense, writing articles like, this is what he actually meant to say, and then they sort of justify what's happening. And so we really do sometimes feel that our biggest battle is not primarily against what the government is doing, but against how the media is reporting.
But just consider this. I mean, if Tutsis in Kgosi in 1994 said, boy, a lot of us seem to be getting hacked to death by machetes, and reporters or political figures said, shut up, you're a Tutsi supremacist for saying so, I think we could fairly say the people shouting them down are pro-genocide of Tutsis.
Your analogy is not worth of a journalist, Mr. Tucker. First and foremost, the Tutsis helped the Belgians to oppress the Hutus because of how they didn't look like them. That is why the revenge killing that happened in Rwanda happened, because the Tutsis were like the coloreds in South Africa. They thought they were almost half Belgian because they were a little taller, fair-skinned, and sharp noses, whereas the Hutus were more not short but average, but dark with big noses, and they were seen as the ugly side. Like in this country, we have colors who think they are white. So those were revenge killings. And yes, if the Tutsis will say that, they will be seen as that because they were the part of the problem. Same as these ones. These were the problem in this country. They were the problem in this country. God Almighty.
Yeah. I mean, what's the other explanation? I don't really get it. I mean, what's the other explanation?
Well, the explanation that is used in court cases. So, by the way, this Kill the Boer chant was found in court not to be hate speech, according to South African law.
It's not hate speech. Yeah. Killing people is not hate speech.
Yeah, chanting about killing people.
You know why it's not hate speech? Because it's not speech they hate. That's why.
Well, maybe that's
speech
it.
They approve of.
So the arguments that is used or are used to defend this type of rhetoric would always be something like, you need to see it in context. You need to remember the apartheid system. You need to remember what these people went through.
That they deserve to be killed. You need to remember that.
Yeah, so the argument is that they're actually commemorating the historic struggle, and that's why they are still chanting this today.
I would disagree with you. I think what they're saying is the people getting murdered deserve to be murdered, so stop complaining about it.
Yeah, well, a few people are saying that...
if you're a journalist and you make assumptions for the guest that you're interviewing, that shows where you stand. Thank you, Mr. Calson.
Out loud, but there does seem to be the sentiment.
Look, at some point, I don't need you to explain your motive if I have a clear glimpse of your actions. If I know what you're doing, I don't have to hear you explain why you're doing it. I already know because the motive is displayed in the action. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So in other words, if I pull out a gun and shoot you and somebody said, did you not like Ernst?
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want, but I just shot you. So I think it's kind of fair to infer that I didn't like you.
Yeah,
right?
But the motive is also explained in the words. So they're trying to defend the words. It's the famous story of Chamberlain and Churchill. When Chamberlain came back from meeting Hitler and he said, no, well, I met him and, I think we're going to find peace. And then Churchill said, no, well, I read what he said and I believed him.
Yeah.
And so you can just read what they're saying. If you read the policy documents of the ruling party, they say they want to convert South Africa into a communist society. They want to have a revolution in South Africa. And if you listen to the more radical parties to the left of them, they openly chant about killing white people. So they say these things out loud.
Again, Enerst, we never chanted about killing white people. We chanted and sing about killing the apartheid system. Please get over it.
And now there are obviously more to the fringe. You find the more extreme rhetoric in South Africa, but But it's very alarming, and how people just rush to their defense all the time.
Permanent Washington is terrified and distraught by the Trump revolution now in progress, and it is a revolution, and it's...
All right, I think this is his commercial. It really fits a big hand because I don't want to hear that nonsense of the Trump revolution. Let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. Oh, Bona, let's talk to my sponsor quickly, and then we'll be back right after this. Again, all right. This show is brought to you by Segongane Medical Services and Clinic. They are a private clinic situated in number 70 Tuffengesgras in Westview, Danville. They specialize on the following: primary health care, ailment diagnosis and treatment, including medication, wound care, family planning, well baby clinic, basic ultrasound, laboratory blood services, treatment of chronic illnesses, treatment and management of patients on ARVs, wellness screening, antenatal clinic, HIV services and counseling. They have a pharmacy on site and they are doing CCMDD services as well, OHS clinic, circumcision clinic and abortion services. Their cell phone number is 064 548 7176 or 071 422 8576. Again, the address is 70 Tuffengesgras in Westview, Pretoria West in Danville. Cell phone number again is 064 548 7176 or 071 422 8576. Yeah, sponsor for today, Segongane Medical Services and Clinic. As you know, as I said, they don't take any medical aid, but they take only cash for their consultation. So please go visit them quickly, and then you pay only $350, and then you only get, but I can so say, you get your perfect and your beautiful consultation labor. Now, so $350 only consultation, and then your medicine will be separate. Let's go back to the video again. All right. As I was saying, they mustn't. I actually lost my train of thought because the way these whole things are done in this country is that when you're a journalist and you are interviewing somebody, you do not, make up their. It's like this guy was like when Ramaphosa went to the Zondo Commission. Remember that time? When he went to the Zondo Commission, and when he was there, he was just being, it was a tea party thing between him and Zondo. There was no harsh questions. There was nothing. He was let to talk for a long time. The same thing happens here. Let's continue.
Gift today. We hope you will. So that's the part that bothers me. Like, I'm not surprised. I'll just say it. I'm not surprised at all. I watched what happened in Rhodesia when it became Zimbabwe in 1980, and something identical happened. There was a lot of killing. And they drove it, to the bottom rank of nations, the poorest country in the world. And following exactly the same script, I always thought that would happen in South Africa. I wanted to be wrong. Turns out I wasn't. What really bothers me is that the West has allowed this and cheered it on, because I live in the West. I live in the United States. So, I don't want to think that my leaders are for killing people on the basis of race, but watching...
There's no killing in South Africa on the basis of race. Let's just fix that one. Kapil. There is no killing of anybody here in the basis of race. White farmers, they hire illegal Zimbabweans to work in their farms to pay them peanuts. And they retaliate by killing them. Thank you.
How they stood by and applauded. Barack Obama's applauded all this stuff. Yep. It tells you everything about Barack Obama and other American leaders, doesn't it?
Yes, and this brings us back to the 90s. So during the 90s, it was, again, after the Cold War, and the world, and especially the West, was high on ideology and this idea that, the world will become liberal and everyone's going to become like us, and everyone in the world is just an American waiting to be liberated, and we just need to go and liberate them from their own traditional beliefs and so forth. And so it really is the case that America and many Western countries played a very significant role in creating the South Africa that we have today.
I'm aware.
And so it's we don't want other people to fix our problems on our behalf. We want to solve our own problems. But you can certainly make the case that the West has a moral responsibility towards the people in South Africa.
Of course, the West forced, through sanctions and boycotts, the change of government that put the ANC in power. So... absolutely. In the same way the West has armed Ukraine. So they have an obligation to make...
The West does not have the right to change policy that's going to redress what has been happening in a country like South Africa. South Africa had an apartheid system where black people were dispossessed of everything, okay? Their dignity, everything. So the West has got an obligation to actually help us to realize our dreams again. It does not have an obligation now to perpetuate the very system that they help overthrow. Some people need to think a little bit. Like you just talk and talk because you can. The West has got no right to now want to push the very same narrative to continue what they themselves have helped to overthrow. This is what we call redress, Bakhecho. Redress.
Make sure.
Yep.
To at least know what's happening and to be honest about it, not to hide their own, responsibility for the crime.
Yeah, and so there's this false dichotomy in South Africa or with regard to South Africa that if you are against what's happening in South Africa now, that means you want the apartheid system. So you have a choice. And there's one former judge recently said this, who's retired. He said that we have a choice in South Africa between...
But it's true. If you don't want kids to go into the same school as your child, what is it that you want? Hey? You are saying you want exclusively African schools, exclusively African places like Orania, exclusively Afrikaans Volksstad, where only white people will stay, Afrikaans white people will stay. What do you call that? That's called apartheid. Nonsense. It's called apartheid. Apartheid. Apartness of people.
A moral system that is dysfunctional, which is the current system, or an immoral system that is a functional one, which is the former system. And so the problem is if you criticize what's happening in South Africa now, you get accused of wanting to return to the apartheid system. But the truth is you can reject both. You can say we don't want the apartheid system and we don't want what's happening in South Africa at the moment. We want to govern ourselves. We want freedom. But it seems that a lot of people are incapable of making that conclusion or leaving any room for saying that both these systems are wrong and we need a better system, a system that is much more decentralized, a system in which the various nations who live in South Africa, because South Africa is very big, it's almost as big as Europe, the various nations living in South Africa should just govern themselves. And that's not what's happening in South Africa.
How do you govern? Icon. How do you govern yourself in a country? Like, this person, does he hear and understand himself? He's saying something like, if you are against this in South Africa, like they say you want apartheid. But again, the government does not allow us to govern us. What do you call that, Enerst? What do you call that, brother? How can we have different groups of people in this country, but having little enclaves, And the worst thing is what? One person has the whole wealth of everybody else, and he wants to have his own state alone and leave the rest and say, you can govern us. With what? Because you've got everything. That's what's happening here. You've got everything. So how can everybody else govern themselves? Govern them. How do they govern themselves when they've got nothing to do that for? Where now you've got everything, every resource, every economic resource, you have it with you. And how in God's name does South Africa just become a fragmented country? We are just from a fragmented past. When I go back there again in the so-called democracy, because some people feel that equality is too much for them. They cannot handle equality. They can't be equal to black people. God.
And I think it's a worthy cause to pursue.
So I think I'm hardly an expert on South Africa at all, but I am American. So
Yeah, you are not, Shame. You have just proven that you don't even know nothing of this country. It's a disgrace.
All right, can I just give my overview of of the different groups in South Africa, and you correct me, but just so people following along, because I think it matters for reasons I'll explain. So South Africa, there are basically two big white populations in South Africa historically. Mm-hmm. They're what we call the Boers, the afrikaners, who were basically religious refugees, a mixture of Dutch and French Huguenots, Protestant Dutch, Protestant French, who moved to Southern Africa for reasons of religious liberty. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you had the English, who I think were, after the Boer War, in power.
Yes.
Who mostly were there for economic reasons and had, in many cases, passports back to Great Britain. And then you had a couple of different African black groups, the largest of which I think is, to this day, are the Zulus.
Yes.
Who, like the Afrikaners, the Boers, and the English, were not native to the area at all. They were newcomers who arrived, I think, just right before the Boers did.
Yeah, not long before.
Okay, this is all true?
Arrived. Yes.
And they, as invading groups often usually do, kind of exterminated the native population, who were what we would call the Bushmen.
The Khoi and the San, as they are also.
It's very disgraceful to hear somebody saying, trying to analyze something, like you are picking fragments here and there and trying to put them together to make a fact. It doesn't work like that. The people who came here were the French, yes, the Germans, and mostly was the Dutch who came in 1652. And they found us here. The whole thing of we invaded from somewhere. It's their history. It's a lie. They found us here. When they got to the Cape, they found people in the Cape. They found Xhosas. They found us here. This whole thing of we came from the north, from Congo, it's a lie. Show me a Tswana-speaking person in Congo now, or any West African country, and I'll move there. Show me one Tswana-speaking person. I'm a Tswana myself. Speaking, we have 11, including their dialect. That was never there. You'll hear what he's saying. He's going to say the Boers were the first. No, there was no person or a thing called a Boer in 1652. It was the Dutch, who hates you, by the way. They are the only country that never said come. But they are your great ancestors. Listen to this.
Also cool.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my dumb foreigner overview. Is that roughly true?
Yeah. So just, can I tell you a story from our history?
I hope you will.
Yes. It's, some people call it the origin story of the Afrikaner people. And it explains a lot about who we are today. So we were settled in the Cape, the proto-Afrikaners, who were still the Dutch, the French, and the Germans. We were then colonized the Cape in, I think, 1810 by the British. It was during the Napoleonic Wars.
When did the Afrikaners for the Boers first get there?
1652.
I went. Oh God, 1652, Mr. Calson. The Dutch people came to South Africa, not the Afrikaners or the Boers. The Afrikaners or the Boers was it's a made-up culture that people made for themselves and separated themselves from the rest of the people. There was never an Afrikaner in the world in 1652. There was never an Afrikaans language in this world in 1652. It was the Dutch. Thank you.
1652.
Yeah, that's 150 years before the Declaration of Independence or something.
Wow.
Something like that. Yeah. So
a long time ago.
Yeah. So my great-great-great-grandfather, Nicolaas Roets, who was the first Roets who came to South Africa, came more or less the time when George Washington was a teenager. So he was 8 years older than George Washington. So my family has been in Africa since, you could say, since George Washington, since the time of George Washington.
Since before the United States was a country.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Cape was...
Do you have another passport?
Like I was saying, two invaders talking about their spoils of war. South America, before it became a country, it was a country, America, before you took it from the Indians and you made it your colony and your country. Let's just get the history facts right. So, America was never your country. America was a country before you made it your country, Mr. Calson. You should be ashamed that the people who are in America, you have pushed them to reserves that are not having any minerals, that have got no development. They're natives of those. After you systematically infected them with smallpox, chickenpox, and all the diseases that the Europeans brought, and you sterilized their women as well, not to make them to give birth again. And you call people that are not doing nothing genocidal. But your history is tainted with blood, sir. Your history is full of blood. Your hands are dripping with blood, Mr. Calson, as we speak today.
Passport?
No. I don't. And I don't really want one.
Right. And do most Afrikaners have other passports?
No, most don't. Yeah.
Okay.
But this goes to the story I want to tell you. So we were colonized by the British, and you can call them
the British colonized the whole South Africa. They didn't colonize you. Stop lying. They didn't colonize you. They colonized the whole of this country where there was minerals like gold and diamonds and whatnot. They took it over. So everybody else suffered with you, we suffered the most because you were the least of everything. You were nothing. You suffered because you wanted a little enclave for the afrikaners, and they said, nah, that's not going to happen. So it was word-on-word crime, and we were caught in between.
Proto-Afrikaners then said, we don't want to be governed by anyone else. We want to govern ourselves. And so they opted to move into the interior of South Africa, which was called the Great Track. And they didn't know what they would expect. They said they reject slavery. They want to foster good relations with local tribes, which they did. There were many treaties signed and agreements and so forth. And then
they did not hold slaves.
There was slavery in the Cape Colony before that, but when the Great Track, that was around the time of the abolition of slavery, and they also rejected slavery. They explicitly said so.
That's not a lie. I don't understand. Slavery is not a matter of someone being in chains. If you come into my place, right? You come into my place, you get there and you take over the land, and I have to work for you. That's slavery. They trekked, yes, from the Cape. They went into the inlands. Look at, they went to Durban. They want to take over Durban. Dingaan killed them. So don't lie and say that they didn't want any slaves. They wanted to rule themselves, blah, 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 blah. No, they came, they found native people staying in here, and they exterminated them and take over their land.
So they then went into the interior, and the leader of the Great Track was a guy called Piet Retief, who went to negotiate with the Zulu king, Dingaan. And so he said, what can we do to buy land from you for our people to live? The agreement was they had to return cattle that was stolen by another tribe with a king called Sikonyela. So they went, they retrieved the cattle, they brought it to the Zulu king. The Zulu king, King Dingaan, said to them that we have to celebrate. So leave your weapons outside the lager, come inside, and we'll have a celebration. During the...
Okay, let's... Oh my God. All right, Jesus. Whose cattle was taken by Singh? What? Because I remember Dingaan became king after Shaka, right? That time, all the Zulus were one nation by one king. There was no other little Zulu kingdom outside. So I don't know who's this Segongane or Nabatla or Sekunjalo or what. Man, these kids were taught nonsense in school. There was nothing like that. Dingaan became king after he killed with his other brothers. They murdered their king Shaka, their brother Shaka, who was a king by that time. And the time when Shaka was a ruler, right, over 40 years, I believe, he reconciled each and every small little tribe that was around to become a Zulu nation they are today. So there was no go get me cows back and then whatever. The Zulus were feared by each and every one because around KZN, only people who were staying there near them were the Sotos and the Swazis. The Tswanas, we ran away, we came to Mafike in Botswana, as we are today, because of this one. All right? So there was no, if this was they are taught at school, shame. No, they should go back and get their money. There was nothing like that. That's a lie.
The celebration at one stage, he chanted Bulalani Abatakati, which...
And by the way, the reason I'm going to come to this Bulala Batagat, Dingaan hated white English who were there before these ones came. They didn't want Shaka's relationship with white people because they saw them as, invaders who come to take over their land. They were very skeptical. So they didn't differentiate between an English and an African-speaking person or Dutch that time. You understand what I'm saying? So when the first ones, Bofewell and the rest of them, I don't know if they were killed or what happened to them. But at Dingaan's time, Dingaan did not want, he called them Batagati. Batagati means witches. He didn't want them in his kingdom. He didn't want them in there. That's why he tricked them by saying, leave your weapons outside, come inside, let's talk. Jeez.
Which means kill the wizards. So they took Retief and his commando, his group, to a nearby hill, and they slaughtered him. They slaughtered him last because they wanted him to see, they wanted to make sure that he sees his people and his son murdered. A few months later, before, so after that, they went on an extermination mission. They killed women and children in the lagers and so forth. A few months later...
A lager is a group of wagons pulled into a circle.
Yes, correct, yes. And so a few months later, his body was found with the treaty on which the Zulu king signed, giving them some land.
All right, how did the Zulu king sign? Because first and foremost, what was the treaty written in which language? Was it English? Was it Afrikaans? Was it Zulu? Did the king have the capacity to read that thing? Did the king know what he was signing? Hey? Was that a legal document? Was it? 4 things. My daughter can't sign when she's under 18 in this country for anything because she's still a minor. I must sign for them. So you're coming to an illiterate in your standards and you say, sign a treaty here. And you thought he was dumb enough to sign. Maybe you're saying sign the whole kingdom because he could not read Dutch. I don't know what document, what language was written. He should have asked him what language was written in that thing. So if they find him with a treaty, that is an illegal treaty because first and foremost, the person who signed that thing did not know what the hell was signing. It's the same thing as I can't let my daughter, who's 13 now, sign for anything at home. Really.
So they then initiated a punishment commando, a group of 300 to 400 men to counterattack the Zulus, which eventually led to the Battle of Blood River, one of the most significant battles in our history, where they found themselves completely surrounded. They were about, let's say, 400.
Before the Boers.
Yes, surrounded by 12,000 Zulus. And so they had this wagon, and my great-grandfather was in that lager, and he was the religious leader. His name is Kgosi. So Kgosi.
And what was their religion?
Christian.
Dutch Reformed?
Dutch Reformed, yes.
Yep.
So he said to them, listen, we need to make a vow to God. And so he wrote a vow, which they all made. And the vow said that we're standing here in front of the God in heaven and earth to make a vow to him that if he protects us in the battle that lies ahead, we will commemorate this day in the years to come as a day of thanksgiving and a Sabbath. And we will also tell our children this story, and we will build a church, and we will make sure that the honor of the victory goes to God and not to us.
So this God of yours that you made a vow to, you told him, listen, kill this nonsense black people for our sake, and then we will build you a building. And he did that. Now, I want us to analyze one thing, because I want to talk about this thing, because I have a video. I'll post the link below. You must watch it. It's called The Lie About Blood River, right? I made it specifically on that day. It's in I'll store the link below in the description box, and you guys can go watch it as well. So this God of theirs, they pray and say, listen, if you made us kill 400 men against 12,000. Listen to this and tell me if this makes sense. Listen to that.
So they made this vow, and the battle took place, and the result was that not one of the Afrikaners were killed. 3,000 Zulus died in that battle.
Not one was killed?
Yes, yeah. And so the reason why I'm telling this story is not to point to the Zulu people. We have good relations with the Zulu, and we've worked with them. This was, of course, the one major battle, but we've had good relations with them over the years. But it says something about, firstly, why the Afrikaner people are so patriotic. It says something about why we are so attached to African soil, and why we are still religious. We're a very religious community. We have some problems in terms of belief and so forth. But broadly speaking, the Afrikaners are, compared to Europe and compared to some parts of America, still a very religious people. And it also says something about why we are so attached to the country and why we don't want to leave. We want to stay there because our ancestors have been there for hundreds of years, and we've fought and died for our space there, and we've gotten used to it to a certain extent.
Well, it's the only country that you have, isn't it?
Exactly. We don't have any other country.
Because you're not people from here. Yeah. How can you even say this is the only country? You don't have a country. You're invaders from Europe, man. You call yourself Europeans during apartheid days. You call yourself Europeans, and then Europeans this side, Europeans this side. You don't have a country. How can Tucker Calson say to a person, oh, this is the only country you have? What country are you talking about? The Battle of Blood River is a lie, and I'll tell you why. And as I said, I'm going to throw the link in the description below. The Battle of Blood River went like this. It was 400 men against 12,000 Zulus, right? 12,000, right? 1, 2, 3 zeros. So according to these people's theory and whatever stories they've been telling, this one and their kids before them was this: they had a little lager, which is wooden wagons in a half moon shape, and they shot 12,000 people dead. Let's look at the primitive weapons of that time. Those guns, you have to put the gunpowder, put gunpowder, cock the gunpowder, put a little steel ball and shoot. Then the routine again, you have to take that gun, put gunpowder, put a little steel ball, cock it first, put a little steel gun, and then shoot. Against a running. The thing is, by Shaka's time, the Zulus knew what a gun was. The Zulus knew how to use a gun. The Zulus knew the sound of a gun because they thought it was thunder, because they didn't know that is that sound that makes from a gun. You know? Now you are telling me that these people, 12,000 of them, was killed by a handful of people with primitive weapons that they are familiar with and they know, and they've used them before. Hey? Like, how long they were not automatic guns, automatic guns that are shooting like AK. It was a gun. Literally, you take a powder, put it inside there, take this little steel rod, you cock it, and then you put against 12,000 people running towards you. Really? Wow. Okay. Like I said, it's what they're telling their kids and they're telling themselves. Anyway, so hey.
It was like we can't go back to England. We're not Dutch anymore. There's this slogan in South Africa that says "Go back to Holland." But I mean, I've been to Holland. I've been to Amsterdam. It's a beautiful city, but I don't feel like I'm at home when I go there. It's a beautiful foreign city that I'm attending. We became a people in Africa, which is why we are called the Afrikaners. We named ourselves after the continent, and our language, Afrikaans, is named after the continent.
But you're being called invaders by people whose ancestors were also invaders.
Yeah, well...
How are we invaders? From where? From the Congo. Like I said, someone must just show me a piece of Congo where they speak Tswana about Tamudima Gode. Someone must just show me a piece of Congo where they speak Zulu or Sesotho or whatever language that we have. And I'll go back there, it's fine. We're never invaders in our country. They're the invaders. The Dutch people call them kitchen Dutch. They call Africans kitchen because it's never a language. It's never a language. It's called kitchen Dutch because it's simplified Dutch, Afrikaans, by the way. If you go to, if like I said, now I've done Afrikaans at school forcefully for 12 years of my whole schooling system, If I go to Holland now and I stay there for a couple of months, I'm going to speak Dutch because I know Afrikaans. I'm going to go to Germany and I can hear whatever Germans say because it's similar to what Afrikaans is. So they should go back. They call themselves Europeans. They call themselves Europeans. They call themselves Europeans in the time of apartheid. Do they forget about that? They call themselves Europeans. So now suddenly we're not longer Europeans. We are no longer Dutch. We can't go back to Britain. No, you can go back, Sam, anytime. Bye.
Who came from the north of Africa, yes, from where Cameroon is and so forth, who came down firstly towards the east of Africa and then along the Great Lakes, eventually ending in South Africa.
And
yes.
That is your history, by the way, Bafanas. It's never our history. It's your history. You are the ones who wrote that nonsense, that you're coming from Cameroon down here. Go to Cameroon now and show me a Tswana-speaking person there. Go to Cameroon now and those places there and show me a Sotho-speaking person there. Or show me a Sotho settlement that is still there because there's no in heaven that people can move all of them and never leave something behind. Show me that. That is your history, not ours.
So I think it's what you said is really important because I think from the American or the Western perspective, there's this idea that the Afrikaners, the Boers, are worse. They're the worst whites there, worse than the English.
Yes.
The English, who, by the way, created the concentration camp during the Boer War.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true.
Winston Churchill was there. And kind of behaved pretty dishonorably, I would say, on many, many levels for hundreds of years in South Africa, but that's just my opinion.
Yep.
But that the Boers are somehow the worst and that they have no right to be there. And I think history suggests something different.
Well, absolutely. So on my mother's side, I descend from the British. My great-grandfather fought in the First World War for the British. And so in many ways, culturally, we've become very close to the British because of the influence over the years. And I don't think there's friction today between the Afrikaners and the British, but it certainly is the case. I mean, the concentration camps were horrible. I recently read the Gulag Archipelago, and Solzhenitsyn writes in there that the first concentration camps were invented by the Soviets, but that's actually wrong. That the first concentration camps that we know of at least this type of concentration camps were during the Anglo-Boer War, where about 30,000 women and children died.
This was white on white crime, so
but there was a lot of the great thing about the Anglo-Boer War was that it was in many ways a first for the world. It was, some people call it the first international propaganda war, because it was in a time when newspapers became popular. So there was this propaganda war in Europe with regard to the Boers, or the Boer War, with a lot of people saying the Boers are Boerish. That's where the word comes from.
This thing is the same as the American War of Independence. Hey, two white people fighting over a land that's not theirs. The British and these people were fighting over South Africa, which was never theirs. They are both from Europe, the same as the so-called Americans now, Botak and the rest of them, were fighting their brothers and their sisters in Britain in the American War for Independence, around 1789, I believe. That time, the French Revolution was happening, but they were still supporting American War for Independence as well. Louis XVI was killed for that. So it's two people fighting over land that is not theirs. What about the natives people who of that land, who stay in that land? What about them? Have you ever thought, Tucker, have you ever taken a little time to think about those people?
Evidently, if someone told me that's where the word Boerish comes from, it's to be sort of, very old style and not very sophisticated.
Rough, yeah.
Rough around the edges. And so there was a lot of propaganda, like the Boers being compared to wild hogs and things like that. But that's okay. The word Boer was actually used for a long time as an insult, almost like Jew, like calling someone a Jew. It's like, oh, you're a Boer, typical Boer. But I mean, we're very proud of that word. It's something that we take pride in. It's in many ways, there's some debate about the difference between Boer and Afrikaner, but it's broadly speaking synonymous. But I mean, we're very proud of our history in South Africa, and we've become a very sophisticated community with an immense treasure chest of literature, of poetry, of philosophy, all of it in our own language that we did over especially the last 100 years, which of course is under threat now.
Your language not spoken by anyone else in the world?
No, it descends from Dutch.
Yes.
And so if you spend some time as an Afrikaans person with some Dutch friends, eventually you start to follow, but it's not Dutch anymore. There's been influences by other languages and so forth. So it's there are people who speak it all over the world, but that's only because so many people have left from South Africa. Some estimates say it's about 1 million people, white people, who have left South Africa over the last few decades.
How many are left? How many whites overall in South Africa, and how many of them are Afrikaans?
So it's more or less about 5 million who are left. The Afrikaner community is about 2.7 million. Yeah, and the total population is about just over 60 million.
And now it looks like you're, as you said, entering some kind of final stage where they've been expelled from a bunch of different African countries, as you know. But it sounds like the plan is to force them to leave or kill them, or what is the plan exactly?
So Jan Smuts, the famous Boer general who worked with Churchill, also famously said that South Africa is a country where the best never happens and the worst never happens. And so we sort of believe that, and we hope that the worst outcome is an unrealistic outcome. We do know that the most important thing that we need to do now is to be very well organized in terms of our own communities, to be very well connected to each other. There's this whole debate about the individual and the community in philosophy, and we've realized that if you're just an individual, you are completely helpless. If you're not part of a community, if you're not given meaning by the community of which you are a member, you're completely helpless against the Leviathan, the state. So we need to be.
So in other words, what is actually saying subliminally is that we are preparing for a civil war. We're going to be well organized, we're going to be well connected, we're going to be what as a community vigilant to wait and wage a civil war. That is Trisna's talk right there. Lamola?
Well organized, we need to be armed, we need to have well functioning.
There we go, you need to be armed. Armed for what? Is there war in this country? Huh? Is there war in this country? No, there's no war in this country. Armed for what? Hey? Armed for what? Nobody's killing you. Nobody's trying to kill you. I'm here in my studio now doing this nonsense. I'm not there shooting somebody who's white. Armed for what? You are the ones who are causing trouble in this country, Enerst. You are the ones who are causing trouble. People, we let you stay here because we wanted to build this country with you people. Okay? We did. We became tolerant of you. We never threatened you with any violence. We never did nothing. But the violence inside your heads That, oh, we're being killed every single day. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. God.
Communities who look after each other, look after the poor, do all the things that the government's supposed to be doing, but also look after our safety. So we drive patrols at night. We're involved with tens of thousands of volunteers involved with patrols, looking after our own safety.
Everybody's doing that, brother. Even here, like in Westview I am today, we have got patrols. Lotus Gardens, you're doing the same thing. So every community in this country, whether black or maroon, we are doing that. You're not only you're not exclusive. Stop making yourself victims of your own doing. Every community here is alert of crime. We are all affected by crime in this country, unfortunately. We are all affected by crime in this country. You're not that special. To say, oh, you are the exceptional ones. No, all of us are patrolling our streets, unfortunately.
And so forth. But I think the bigger question here is the future of South Africa. And this is a controversial thing to say, but it's so obvious that it's not sustainable. It's not going to work. And it's just getting worse. So the only possible solution is not simply to say we need a different party in power, because the underlying foundations is problematic. The only possible solution is to move toward a system with subsidiary authorities, which could imply something like a republic for the Afrikaner people. It could imply a kingdom for the Zulu people. It could imply different types of authority depending on the community. But South Africa is a country with subsidiary authorities, which could imply something like a republic for the Afrikaner people, community, but subsidiary authorities, which could imply communities who look after each other, look after the poor, do all the things that the government's supposed to be doing, but also look after our safety. So we drive patrols at night. We're involved with tens of thousands of volunteers involved with patrols, looking after our own safety, and so forth. But I think the bigger question here is the future of South Africa. And this is a controversial thing to say, but it's so obvious that it's not sustainable. It's not going to work, and it's just getting worse. So the only possible solution is not simply to say we need a different party in power, because the underlying foundations is problematic. The only possible solution is to move toward a system with subsidiary authorities, which could imply something like a republic for the Afrikaner people. It could imply a kingdom for the Zulu people.
Thank you. Now we know what is their motive behind this whole thing. They want their little own country within our country. That's not going to happen. They had a little country within a country where black people were subservient, black people were oppressed, black people didn't have anything. That's what they want. So they are trying to push this, and Zulu people never asked for this. Zulu people kingdom is there. It never asked to be independent. They are pushing it so that they can be able to say, you see, even black people want to be independent. No. Zulu people never asked for that so-called independent state or a republic for the Zulus. They never asked for that. They are the ones who are trying to push separation from amongst us, because they want to divide and conquer us. They know if they put the Zulus there, they put the Tswanas there, they put whatever there, they can be able to divide and conquer us easily. That is their whole motive behind this whole thing, is to divide this country, to destroy it, and to have their own share, like they did before in apartheid. They want apartheid back. He said himself, if you're against this system now, they say you want apartheid back. He's exactly saying the same thing now, that yes, we want to be separate again from everybody else.
It can imply different types of authority depending on the community. But South Africa is a country made up of a long list of minorities. Unless, if you look at it from a racial perspective, you can say there's a black majority. But the black majority also consists of a variety, as you mentioned, a variety of nations and tribes and so forth.
And plus massive immigration into your country.
Yeah, it's a very serious problem. Yeah, we virtually don't have borders in South Africa.
Right. And a problem, of course, for the country, but also a demographic fact that it's not as if there's this like monolithic black majority. There are all kinds of different components of the black majority, right?
Yes.
It's because that's what they did. They divided us amongst our tribes and amongst our languages. Simple example, Soweto, the famous township. Soweto simply means southwest townships of Johannesburg. Why is it? It was little group of people, They put the Zulus here, they put the Sotus here, they put the Tswanas here, they put this, and they call it Soweto. So they would divide us amongst ourselves. That is in between. That is now the lower level. The first level was the TVBC states, the little reserves. We put that Tswana was for only Tswana people where I come from, where we were put by force. If you are Tswana, you have to move there. You get away from the vendors. Don't mix with the Sotos. Don't mix with the Ndebeles. Don't mix with anybody else except you. The Zulus were put in KZN where they are now, and they were put there as well as the Kingdom of the Zulus. The vendors were put in Venda. The Xhosas were given to Transkei and Ciskei. So they saw that by dividing us amongst our cultures and our languages, that will weaken us from having a black unity, that we can fight against them. So what's the best thing to do? Divide them and develop them differently. Let them envy each other and hate each other, because the Tswanas will be much better than the Zulus, and the Zulus will envy those. The Tsongas will hate the vendors, because the vendors, that's what they did. So even if you could now mix all of us at the same time, we don't care if we speak in Tswana or Zulu or Xhosa or whatever. We are all black people. We are all Africans. We wouldn't give a damn. Africa, this whole continent, was never there were never borders. There were no borders. There were no countries. They are the ones who came and carved Africa into these small little countries, and then they made us to become enemies of each other, because they know their modus operandi is divide and rule. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer and rule. They know if they can be able to divide us amongst ourselves, we will kill each other, because they will make sure that if I'm Tswana, I'll be better than the other one. Hence, what happened in Rwanda happened. Because the Belgians saw the two main groups, and they said, oh, the Tutsis are a little taller, fair, skinny. We're going to give them everything that the Hutus are not going to be given a chance of. Hence, the Hutus killed their own brothers because of what the Belgians did to them. This is what these people are like they want for this country. They want the same thing to happen to South Africa, and that's not going to happen.
Don't necessarily get along.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of Zimbabweans murdered in South Africa by South Africa.
Xenophobic violence. Every now and then there's this upsurge in violence against foreigners. So they get accused. What typically happens is people come in from the north of South Africa, like Malawi, Zimbabwe, and so forth, Zambia, and so forth. And then they work and they accept jobs for lower wages. And
and they accept those lower jobs from who? Right? They accept those jobs from who, Enerst? Wow, this man is shooting himself in the foot, eh? They accept those jobs from who? Jesus.
Yes.
And a lot of them work really hard.
Yes.
And so that leads to friction, because there's very high unemployment in South Africa already. And so it leads to friction.
Caused by you. So you hire cheap labor in expense of South Africans. What do you expect?
Among the local communities. And then every now and then we have this upsurge in very, very brutal xenophobic violence. So yes, the border it's virtually non-existent, the border to the north of South Africa.
So what would it look like to have autonomous republics? And is that allowed under your 94 Constitution? I thought there was some provision for that.
Well, it's interesting that you know this. Yes. So there's a section in the South African Constitution, Section 235, that provides for self-determination for communities. Now, there's some ambiguity in terms of how to interpret that section, but there's some constitutional provision for that. And so during the 90s, the negotiations for a new South Africa, the more conservative groups who were white and black, who were arguing for self-determination, were made fun of by the ruling party at the time, the National Party, and the ANC, of course, and also some Westerners. This is just backwards, this idea of governing yourself.
The self-determination does not mean separate government, Ernest. It simply means your culture, we will always respect. You have the right to practice your culture however you want. The one thing that we will never go back to is separating people by their cultures and say that's self-determination. Self-determination, according to his standards and his people, is that they must be given their own Boer republic, their own land, where they can be able to be by themselves and stay there, and no one else must come in and stay with them. They want apartheid 2.1, 2.0, or 2. Whatever to come back in the name of self-determination. Self-determination simply means that there is you are not forced by anybody not to practice your culture. You are allowed to practice your culture. You are whatever belief that you want to practice, is so long as it does not discriminate against anybody else. That is self-determination.
Is somehow an old ancient thing that we should move away from. And part of the problem, part of the reason why they were made fun of is the question is, how do you do that practically? And the only way to practically do that is to have areas where people live concentrated, where people form a de facto majority. And there are such areas, like, for example, when you talk about the Zulus and so forth, the Afrikaner people are pretty much dispersed, although there are some areas where we live more concentrated. But there's, for example, there are some initiatives to get Afrikaners to move closer together. And I think that's a solution that we need to really focus on, is getting the Afrikaners to move closer together.
So they're clustered in Pretoria, was my understanding.
The majority, yes. Pretoria, and then the Western Cape, and the south of the country. And then there's this Orania initiative in the Northern Cape.
So tell us about that. What is Orania?
So Orania is a cultural community. It's an Afrikaner cultural community. It's fairly small. It's about 3,000 people, but it's growing rapidly. It's growing by about 12 to 15% per year. And the idea is it's a culture. It's privately owned. It's a community where the Afrikaner culture can survive and flourish. And it has been growing at quite a pace, even though it's from a small base. But the idea is to say this is an area where we are the majority and we make our own decisions. We make our own laws. We govern ourselves. We make our own decisions in terms of what happens with our tax money, what happens with our streets, what type of monuments.
Do you murder other people or oppress other people?
No.
Then why, maybe you have an answer to this, a neighborhood, a community of 3,000 people, which is tiny, even by South African standards, has received unrelenting negative media attention in the West. Why is that?
Because they are trying to push apartheid again, Tucker. They are trying to become separate from other people. Nothing else. It's not about culture. Culture does not die because I'm speaking English now. I'm speaking English now because I want you to understand me. That doesn't make me lose my Tswana-ness. That doesn't make me lose my Tswana culture. So they themselves, they want to hide this thing of culture under their separate development. They want apartheid back because they want to be separate, because they want to be out of other people. They want to be only exclusively things to be the same as apartheid, but to be done in democratic way. Okay? That is the reason why this has got so much negative coverage, because it's a lie. It's not about culture or preserving of culture or whatever. It's a matter of they do not want to mix with other people. They want to be alone by themselves because they are saying, oh, we're going to be losing our culture. How the hell do you know why they're suffering? Because their culture was made. Eh? It was made up. It was never natural. God didn't create Africans. God didn't create Afrikaners. God didn't create Boers. God created Dutch. God created Dutch language. That is why they are so afraid of losing it, because they know it's not even a real thing. It doesn't have any roots. Doesn't have any country. The Chinese have China. English have Britain. America have the real Americans, not you. Aborigines are in Australia and everybody else. They don't have anywhere to go because they are not even a culture themselves. There's a group of people who were renegades, who wanted to do things their own way with no other people. And they failed over and over and over and over again, unfortunately.
Such a moral crime, such an outrage to have a community like that.
Yeah, it's bizarre the extent to which Orania has been attacked, especially in the international media. So I spoke with a friend in Europe recently who said to me, I've only read negative things about Orania, but that's why I like it. because I know who's writing it.
A lot of us have reached that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so in South Africa, there are many traditional...
The lying is just, can I just pause and just say, the lying is unsustainable. When you open up the New York Times and it's a safe bet that whatever they're telling you is the opposite of the truth, then you've reached a point where it's like, why even have media coverage at that point? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in South Africa, there are many cultural communities, like Zulu communities, different. Let's say there are many black cultural communities, and when they are reported on by the media, they would say, this Zulu cultural community so-and-so, or this Xhosa cultural community.
And they never wanted self-determination. They never wanted to be separate from us. We have Tswana cultural communities, a lot of them. We have Sotho, we have Zulu, we have Xhosa. They never said, we want to be independent and not mix with other people. No, they never did that. You are. They never said they didn't want to mix with anybody else, but you did. That is the difference between us and you. Our Ubuntu simply means we mix with other people and we share our culture with other people. Culture simply means inclusivity. You're not going to lose your culture because I'm married to a white person. I'm going to lose my Tswananess because I'm married to a white girl. I'm going to still be Tswana married to a white girl. There's a difference right there. That's the only difference that is there. Nothing much, nothing less.
Community is doing this. But when it's Orania, they say it's a whites-only enclave. That's the term they use, even though it's a...
But it is a whites-only enclave. It's an Afrikaner cultural white-only enclave. That's what you're saying. Are there black people in there? You should be asking the question, are there black people inside Orania? No. Are they allowed to go in there? No. There's a lot of documentaries that have been made by this or about this Orania. On YouTube, just go and search Orania. You will see. No one except being white Africans is accepted in Orania. No one else is accepted except when you are a white Afrikaner. Even if you are an American English speaking, you're not accepted there. Even if you are an English speaking white person, you're not accepted there, because they think they're exclusive and they think actually they're much better than anybody else.
Cultural community. So black communities can have that.
What is that? Why the hostility? And that's true globally, by the way. There's any white majority country, there are very few left. But there's just suspect because they exist. What is that?
Tucker Calson, let me just help you a little bit. If it's a country like Britain and any other country originally being white and people are coming in and the culture is mixing, I understand. But not somebody who comes from another country to come to another country and try to create a country within a country for themselves alone. That's the difference between if you are implying that there's a little, there's so small majority white countries. No, it's because people are migrating. People go. If you're saying Europe is being invaded by Muslims and whatnot, it's something else. But these ones, remember, they came from the north, and they came here, and they said we're going to take over this country to be ours. The same as like the British, who is you ancestors, by the way. They took Australia, they took New Zealand, they took America, and they took Canada. Till today, those 4 countries are now colonies that are legal and acceptable and accepted. We cannot be told by people who come to invade that, you know what, they're not losing anything, unfortunately. They are fine.
I think it's underpinned by oikophobia, this idea of just hating your own people and wanting your own people to
It is strange. I'm not mad at China for being 99% Chinese or whatever. I'm not mad at Burundi for being all black. It just doesn't never even enters my mind. What is that? Why is that? I mean, honestly, I guess now we can ask questions like this.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
I honestly think it's underpinned by an enormous sense of guilt within Western society or the Western world, not knowing how to make sense of the Second World War, and being influenced over decades and centuries by enlightened philosophy that talks about how you are the problem and how you should have a sense of guilt for who you are, and the idea that community and identity is a bad thing. But it's not a bad thing if it's someone else.
Not only is it not a bad thing, it's required by law. Community and identity, I mean, those are like the buzzwords of the moment.
Yes.
But those are, I mean, basically it's just like everyone hates whites, including a lot of whites. And I just don't understand that. I am white, but I'm kind of agnostic on the question. I kind of like all people. I think they're all created by God. But we're required to pretend this isn't happening, but it is happening. Everybody hates the whites and wants them to die. Where does that come from?
I think it's primarily a Western thing.
But what's the root of it? I think it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yes.
And by the way, if everyone wanted Malaysians to die or something, I would say, whoa. Whatever Malaysia has done through the years, like you can't attack people on the basis of their Malaysianness. That's just wrong. I would say that, and I would mean it too.
Yes.
But it's considered a crime to say that about whites. Like, where does that come from? I'm honestly baffled. Do you have any idea?
Well, no, I can only speculate. I think some part of this oikophobia, I honestly think Enlightenment philosophy has played a big role in this. I think the influence of, ideas about power structures and all these stuff that's coming from America. It used to come from Europe.
But the Chinese have an awful lot of power in Asia, and I never hear anybody say you should, it's outrageous that China's 95% Han or something. It's not even a thing. It's something about as they say in our universities, whiteness is uniquely offensive.
Yes.
It's uniquely, and I don't think that's a product of enlightenment.
Okay, whiteness means white supremacy, Tucker. Let me just help you quickly. Whiteness simply means white supremacy. If you're going to consider yourself supreme than other people, then that's the problem. We don't care about you if you're a human being who's living next to me and doing your job, you're having your own life, nothing is wrong with that. But if you now start to take your color of your skin to become the barometer of success instead of merit and hard work, and then you take other people's skin colors to become the barometer of not being successful, then that is the problem right there, brother. So you don't care about you as a white person, we care about the whiteness. That is, you are trying to push on people that they are inferior than you.
Philosophy, because, this is a new thing. This is post-war. The Second World War did this in some way that I don't fully understand. I don't understand at all, actually.
I think, so Alasdair MacIntyre has an explanation of how to make sense of how we derailed in trying to make sense of the Second World War. Obviously, Hitler was evil and all of that. No one disagrees with that.
Obviously.
But so the wrong lesson from the Second World War is that nationalism is evil, or a sense of pride in your identity is evil. And there are a lot of people who would really like us to believe this, that we need to abolish communal identities. MacIntyre's line...
Only when they're white.
Yes.
So long as you are going to take that national pride and say white power, white this, we hate the Jews, we hate the whatever, then that will be a problem. That will be a problem. But if you don't do that, there won't be a problem. That will be a problem. If you're going to now go ahead and say white power, white this, then that's going to be a problem, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So it's actually, I don't think anyone thought the lesson of the war was that nationalism is evil, only that nationalism when whites do it.
Yeah, when whites do it, yeah. So MacIntyre's line is that a sense of communal identity and pursuing what is good for your people is a good, and what went wrong...
Be back after this.
With the Second World War was that Hitler was trying to pursue this good at the expense of all other goods. He was detaching this one thing from everything else, and you cannot do that without committing evil and inflicting evil, and so I think it's a bizarre situation where we are in currently. But
so I thought and think that the lesson of the Second World War was that targeting people for violence and discrimination, but especially violence on the basis of their immutable genetic characteristics, was wrong. That's what I was taught.
It's inherently evil.
Then. I believe that now as much as
you were taught that, but you had a system of segregation in America, which you thrived on as well. White people. It's so amazing that you are taught that when only it is going to affect you, because you did that to black people in America, brother. You had slavery in the U.S. I'm sure your ancestors owned plantations and slaves. So please,
I've ever believed it, but it's just crazy to see people say that on the one hand, and then. For a lot of people, a lot of our leaders, the lesson of the Second World War was, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Actually, you need to target more people on the basis of their immutable ethnic characteristics, their whiteness, and kill them. That's the lesson? No, that's the opposite lesson, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, so in South Africa, and this is part of the bizarre part of it, is the ruling party in South Africa, they would write in their own policy documents. They say our ideology is a blend of race, nationalism, and socialism. That's literally what Nazi means. Now, I'm not saying they're Nazis, but in some sense, they're calling themselves Nazis. If they say we promote a combination of race, nationalism, and socialism.
Yeah, I don't think people can hear themselves. I think even this conversation will be like, oh, that's a Nazi conversation. It's like, no. We're arguing, or I'll speak for myself. I'm arguing against what I thought the core idea was, or the core bad idea in the Second World War, which is that you should attack people, hurt people because of how they were born. I'm just
based on who they are.
Always been opposed to that. I will always be opposed to that. But now it's like complaining about it makes, I don't know, it's all so...
You're not even allowed to say this has to stop.
It's also fake. Yeah. Like it's actually, this is all a cover for something much more sinister that is not really related to the Second World War. Like, I just don't think, because it doesn't make any sense. As an intellectual exercise, you just like immediately hit a brick wall.
Yep.
Like what you're saying is nonsensical, right?
Yeah, well, It's difficult to make sense of it because it's completely irrational.
It's completely irrational. Therefore, I think it's a lie because it doesn't even, like, I don't have a especially high IQ, and it's super obvious to me that it doesn't make any sense. So, like, what really, I guess there's no answer. I don't know the answer, but there's something very deep going on here where the leaders of every country in the world all of a sudden decide this one ethnic group needs to be killed. Like, what?
Well, I think
no leader wanted that except yours, that were killing other people. You know, no leader, especially in this country, no one has ever said people must be killed. They should have been dead by now if they said, because they're a very small number. They could have been killed by now if there was ever an order from the EFF, the ANC, the UDM, the whatever black party that is here to say, let's kill these people. They will be dead by now. Unfortunately, in this country, it's not happening. It happened in the time of apartheid when their government said they must kill black people like that.
One part of it is something that you've said before, which is affluence. The people in the Western world have become very affluent, and unfortunately, as a result of that, very self-centered, and in many ways, they've become disconnected from their communities, disconnected from their tradition and so forth.
There's no doubt about that. But I mean, I just spent a lot of time in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf, the most affluent countries in the world per capita, I think. I mean, they are. And, you know, whatever you think of them, you don't see a lot of Arab leaders being like, we're too Arab. That's the problem, where I hate myself for my Arabness. Like, that doesn't even occur to them. Yeah. To their great credit, by the way. I don't think self-hatred's ever good. I don't think hating anybody on the basis of race is ever good. It's only this one group that does it.
I'd like to believe, and I hope that I'm right, that it's a minority within the Western world that really believes this stuff.
I think.
But they have significant power and influence.
Boy, do they.
They are the editors of newspapers, they are the prime ministers, they are professors at universities and so forth. And those are the people who's promoting this type of idea. When I think most hardworking, ordinary people don't fall for this.
Certainly most authentic Christians reject it out of hand immediately.
Yeah. It's essentially anti-Christian in many ways.
Well, it is the definition of anti-Christian, I think. I mean, that's look, what do I know? Don't take theology advice from me, but that's certainly my truest, deepest belief that this is immoral, you know, no matter who it's done to.
Yep.
So I should have said this at the outset, but one of the reasons there's been this real change in people's willingness in the West to talk about what's happening in South Africa in an honest way, not with the false pieties of Desmond Tutu was so great, whatever Desmond, you think of Desmond Tutu, not much, but we were required to talk about South Africa in a very specific way and to repeat certain cliches at gunpoint, and that's changed in the past couple of months, and it's really changed due to a South African emigre called Elon Musk. This is my perspective. You tell me yours. But he has made it possible through X, but also through statements he's made on X, to say the obvious, which is this is a crime against a beleaguered minority, and this is racism against human beings, and it's wrong.
And he's lying, Elon Musk. What we suffered as black people in this country is being downplayed. And the UN did say this is a crime against humanity. But if we say that, I've been told to forget about it, move on. There is no systematic racism against white people. I can't be racist to you, whereas I don't have anything to take from you. But I can be racist to you if I can take everything from you and make you my slave. Then I'm racist. Do you understand? I can never be racist towards somebody just because I say they must go back to their own land when they came from. That's not racism. That's just the truth. So Elon Musk is a little rich boy who grew up here in privilege, a white boy who grew up here very privileged with their father owning mines, with our fathers working there for subhuman wages. Now he goes there and talks too much. That's all what he is. Nothing else, nothing more.
What do you feel that?
Yes. So I don't know how much of what is in his biography by Isaacson is true, but it does seem from his biography that he's had some bad experiences growing up in South Africa, which is unfortunate. And we're still not sure quite how attached he still is to South Africa as a country, but looking at his X and his comments, it's very clear that he's interested. And the strange thing is, even though some people are very angry with him for speaking about South Africa, the only thing that he's really doing is he's picking up a mirror and he's saying, look at what's happening in South Africa. And he's He's retweeting videos from rallies in South Africa. And
Exactly.
So he's literally just saying to people, look at this stuff that's happening in South Africa.
Yeah, what do you think of this?
Can Elon Musk do the same thing with 1976 videos? Can he do the same thing with black people still living below the poverty line in this country? Can he do the same thing about our condition of the poverty that we have in this country? Can he do the same? Can he still go and retweet those things? Can he still go and check how they are black workers who are working in their farms? How are they staying in their own poverty? Can he do that? Instead of showing a rally of people chanting "kill the Boer, kill the farmer," that doesn't mean kill a literal person. It simply means get rid of the system that is still there in our country now. They are still trying to push it. They're still trying to push that system at the moment to say, listen, this system has to continue, but this time in democracy, because you need to be special treated like we were before. If people say no, they are racist towards me. Oh, I want equality. I want my only white kids to be in one school. No, you can't do that. Oh, you are a racist because you can't let me have my cake and eat it. You are racist because you can't let me still continue in my privilege. That's nonsense.
Are you okay with this?
No,
Do you defend
I
this?
think,
Right.
well, a lot of people, I think, are. I can speak for a lot of people in saying that we're really, really grateful for what Elon Musk is doing to shed light on what is happening in South Africa.
It must be so weird to live in a country that has received so much attention from Western media, so much attention. I mean, there's no other.
Because of a lie. Because of a lie that he himself is pushing in your show now. It's not like it's a good attention. It's a terrible attention because it's a lie. You are lying in that. You are lying. Systematically lying so terribly. To put like that. You are trying to make this country to become this ugly thing when it's not. I mean, the very people who are suppressing people are now crying of oppression.
Country in Africa where your average American knows the name of 3 famous people. You know what I mean? There's not even close. You name 3 famous people from, Congo. No, but every American knows about Nelson Mandela, probably Winnie Mandela, Desmond Tutu.
Jan Smuts was also very big, who became this Boer general who was a advisor to Churchill.
Had joined the English in the First World War,
Yes, First and Second World War.
Right, but the First World War was, not even 15 years after the Boer War. So that was a pretty remarkable decision that he made. I don't think most people are that in tune, but they know the big outlines, but of what happened post-94, and they know all about apartheid and all that. But it must be so weird to be living in this country where all this stuff is happening and nobody is saying anything about it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. And I have to say, the last few months has been quite a ride in terms of what the executive order signed by President Trump and statements coming from the US.
To tell us about that executive order, if you don't mind.
So the executive order is a very strong reprimanding of what the South African government is doing. It says that the South African government is, well, as Trump said, is treating certain sections of society very badly. And
their own people are sleeping on the streets. Busy guy now. The people are staying on the streets. America's people living below the poverty line is extreme. Is disgusting. Busy guy now. We are treating who we are treating. He has no idea that orange man. He has no idea what's happening in this country. Even this one laughing. He has no idea what's happening here. No idea.
And that the US
I have a cold. That's the Trumpiest thing ever said.
And the US will not stand for this. And so it boils down to sanctions in an important way, which is not. On one part of it says that they will grant refugee status to Afrikaners if they want to go to the US, which I don't think, in all fairness, we're really grateful for the public stance taken by the US. And in a certain sense, they haven't gone far enough. But in a certain sense, I don't think the granting of refugee status is much of a solution. Some people will take that up.
It's because you don't leave your mansions and farms and money and your important status. There is why you don't want to go there and become a refugee. You lie to Trump and tell them that you are being shot every single day in the streets. So he said, okay, then a refugee is somebody who runs from a war. right? So you told him that there's a war in this country and people are being shot every single day. Ooh, people are being killed. You don't tell him, listen, Trump, we're in our high-walled houses in Pretoria East with servants and pools and whatnot, but you just don't want to mix with these people, so you're going to create a little story of a genocide against these people. They don't tell Trump, I own ZZ2 farm that is making me billions every year, but I don't just want to share it with these black people, so I'm being killed every single day. Okay, then come to the US and become a refugee. No. You know what? I think you can just help me here. It's fine. How can someone help you in a place where you're being killed every single day? Trump must just wake up and smell the damn coffee, for goodness sakes. Huh? He must just wake up and say, those who will go, they are the poor white ones who are here. There'll be the poor ones who doesn't have nothing on their name. Yeah, Roets and his family and everybody else in the Afri Forum, they will never live the privilege they live in this country at the moment. They will never. Those who will go will be those who are very poor, who doesn't have nothing to show for in their whole lives, because they're going to go there and beg and say, oh, we failed in our whiteness to accumulate wealth for ourselves. Please take us in as poor Afrikaners. These ones will never leave because they know that they're going to be losing their status as white supremacy in this country and leaving their nations behind and leaving their JSE listed. Imagine Rupert going to be a refugee in the US. Do you think that will happen?
But that's why I told you the story of the Battle of Blood River and the vow. We are culturally very, very attached to South Africa. And so
no, you are not. You are attached to this country by your own white supremacy, not culture. There's no culture called Afrikaans, brother. You are the only ones who are practicing it. Please. Even the cars don't do that nonsense anymore. You are not bound in this country by any cultural thing. You are bound in this country because you are supreme. Some of you tried to go to Australia. They failed. They failed to go to Australia. Because when they got there, they were not having that supreme whiteness anymore. They didn't have black servants. They had black bosses who knew what the hell they were doing. And you could not stand and stand the fact that these people are supposed to know their place because you are used to black servants. It's not a matter of culture in this country, Enerst. Come on.
I think your family got to South Africa around the time my family got to the United States. And this is
hundreds of years.
This is my country.
I think I'm ninth generation. And so
I also have a mother of English descent, and I'm also, unlike you, I'm ashamed of it. Sorry, just kidding. Sort of, not really. But yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's your country. I mean, what at that point, what.
So I think what
not their country.
A better response from the US could be is to take a firm stance against what is happening in terms of what the South African government is doing, but then to say how can the US support minority groups in South Africa who are really working for some form of self-determination. I think America should recognize that it does have part in the problem in terms of what happened historically.
Are you kidding? Yes, it does. Big time.
Yes.
So apartheid ending is a problem that Americans created. Is that what they're saying? They've got some part in what is happening now because you interfered in apartheid by sanctioning all South Africa and forcing Mandela to come in and the ANC to create an equal society for everybody, including Afrikaners. So it's a problem. So you should take responsibility of saying, oh, shit, I made a mistake by putting black people in an equal footing with you. Let me just go there and try to buy maybe Orania and create a whole white neighborhood for you. You should be ashamed of yourself. America's got no part in anything in this country. America just said we cannot let people be oppressed. Not Trump's America. The real America said we can't let people be oppressed like this forever by a minority of people from Europe. So we're going to fight until these people are liberated and free. That's what they did. The real America, not you, the right-wingers like Tucker Calson and yourself. That's what they did.
And therefore, it's reasonable and I think it's fair. And I'm hesitant to say this because I'm not an American, but I think it's reasonable to say that America has some form of a moral responsibility, not to fix South Africa, but at least to try to rework this mess that has been created because it was involved in creating this mess.
We've mobilized our State Department to defend, quote, trans rights in the Donbass, okay? We've waded into every sectarian conflict in this world for the past 80 years. Yeah, I think we can certainly say that a minority group targeted for genocide in a country we've been involved in really intimately for my entire life, that group has a right not to be killed and to have some measure of self-determination. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
That's not too big a
Absolutely,
deal,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and the solution, I would say the most sustainable solution is to help such communities to govern themselves, to have self-determination. And
So America must help you create your own country.
it's not only, obviously it would be in our interest, but I think it's also in the interest of the West and of America.
Just on principle, like every other group in the world has the right to its own homeland except white people? Like what?
Tucker, no one has ever said that. These people, whenever they sit down and talk amongst themselves, they're just lying to each other. Like, no one has ever said, no, where in the world has it ever said or white people can't have their own country? What we are saying here is that no white settler and white invader who put apartheid on our necks is going to have his own little country inside our country again. There will never be white supremacy here again. There will never be a little corner there where it's only Afrikaners staying there by themselves. Never. They can have a run here for now, but it's going to go as well. Soon, it will be gone.
Yeah.
Like, just explain to me how that makes sense. Either no group has the right or every group has the right. Yep. It's really that simple. And if you want to say no group has the right, okay.
We never created this country to say black people are going to be superior than whites. No, we never did that. We said, all of us, let's work together to build a country. Together, equally. Then the word equal scares the hell out of these people.
You might even convince me. I don't know. I'm not a race guy, actually, by my temperament at all. I'd kind of like...
You are a liar. You're a racist, Wena. We know that.
Like to ignore it. But as long as some groups have a right to self-determination, then every group has a right. Yep. It's that simple. Yes. And if there's a special carve-out where one...
After 94, there was never this self-determination of black people in South Africa, Mr. Calson. There was never a rise. There was never a call for black determination, self-determination in South Africa. There was never something like that. Do you understand? There was never something like that. So the only people who have been crying self-determination, separatism, apartheid back are these people. It's the person in front of you. He is the only group in this country that has been crying for that. After they've put apartheid yoke on our necks for over 3 centuries. Even though apartheid started being a policy in 1948, from 1910, when the British came here, none of us were negotiated with and told, okay, listen guys, we're going to do this for you. It never did. We are always the last people to be consulted in this country as black people. There's people of my skin color.
One group doesn't have a right. You have to explain to me why that group doesn't have that right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is that fair?
No, it's absolutely fair. Well, I think South Africa is a...
What? I mean, what the hell is... Why are we playing along with this nonsense?
Yeah, it's this narrative has become this massive stream that is turned into rapids on a river that just pulls everyone along. And this narrative just says if you're white, then there's inherently something wrong with you.
It doesn't make any sense.
No one has ever said if you're white, there's something wrong with you. You're lying. No one has ever said that. But we have been trying to live with these people forever. We have made excuses for them. We have tried. There's black people in the DA, for goodness sakes. Penwell just joined AfriForum now. He's supposed to be a black man. Is he black or colored? Something like that. He just joined AfriForum. No one has ever said you being white is wrong. You're the one who's saying you being white with other people is wrong. You want to be alone there on your own. You don't want other people to mix with other people. You're the one who says that.
And it's leading toward a really bad conclusion, obviously, as it has for every other group targeted in this way has really suffered in a bit, and there are a lot of them. Okay, it's not, there are a lot of them.
Yep.
And it never ends up well. And I just don't know why we're playing along where you're not even allowed to say, oh, you haven't been. I don't care anymore, obviously. But again, either every group has a right to self-determination or no group does. You can't have this system where, some groups do or all groups do, but...
Like I said, there is no other group that says they want self-determination except them. It should say to you, oh, no one else has ever said they want. It's only us who are saying that we want. No one ever said they want self-determination in this country, except for this small group of people.
No. It's all or nothing on this.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee...
Tell me how I'm wrong.
No. Well, I can guarantee you that when I get back home, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble for this interview.
Well, I don't know why, though. I mean, like, what's the...
Because what you are doing is treasonous. It's treasonous, what you are doing. Every law's got its own laws, brother. Tucker Calson will never go to Europe and speak ill about Africa and about America. He will be arrested on the spot. It's treasonous. You must read the word treason. What does it mean? You'll know what you're doing is treasonous.
Counter argument. I don't really get it. Like, what is the counter argument? There's only one group on the entire face of the planet that doesn't have the right that every other group has. Like, tell me how.
It's
No,
really
I mean, like,
bizarre.
maybe there's a good answer. I'm waiting for
If
it.
you look at Ernst Roets' body language, if you know body language, you can see that he is seeing that he's really in over his head. You can see that actually, you know what, Tucker, I'm actually lying, my bro. I'm lying so badly, and I don't know. You know what happened now is that we have blown this so much out of proportion. We don't know how to handle the backlash. If you can look at him, he's not actually comfortable anymore. Look at this.
Right?
No, well, we don't know what the answer is.
So there is no answer. And so because there is no answer, the way that uniformity is maintained is just through threats. Like, shut up.
Yep.
You're a bad person for saying that. You're a Nazi. It's like, no. I hate the Nazis. I'm going to speak for myself. I hate the Nazis.
Of course.
I hate the idea that people are attacked for something they can't control, like how they're born.
Yep.
Their genetics. I just don't believe in that. I never will. I'm a Christian. I don't believe in it. So you can call me whatever you want. I'm actually making the opposite case. And I haven't done anything to be ashamed of. And if defending the right of people not to be murdered because of how they were born is a crime, then I'll plead to it.
Yep.
But I actually think that the only thing the people currently in charge of most of the world, certainly of the West, are good at is seizing the moral high ground. And they don't deserve it. They haven't earned it. They're rotten. Their ideas are rotten. And they don't deserve to lecture the rest of us about our moral inferiority while they're endorsing the murder of people for how they were born. Sorry.
It's a house of cards, yeah. So
What is a house of cards? That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's built and it's a very shining house of cards, and it's very proud of its accomplishments, but it's not sustainable. So South Africa has been a victim of Western imperialism in many ways, and ideologically currently, it's ideological imperialism, but also, and this is interesting, the ANC that's governing South Africa today was founded just after the unionization of South Africa in 1910. And they said that this was one of the major triggers that sparked us to start this movement. And the unionization was after the Boer War. Before the union, South Africa was a variety of different republics and colonies governing themselves. And unionization effectively meant that all of these different subsidiary authorities were combined in.
And those were white Boer republics. It was 3 of them. You mustn't say there was a lot. It was 3 of them. Tucker. It was the Cape Colony, the Cape Province, where it was British. It was the Orange Free State, which was Afrikaans. It was Transvaal, which was Afrikaans. So these 3. And look at this. They had the Cape, that was good for transport routes and whatnot. They had Transvaal, which had Johannesburg with the mines and everything. They had Orange Free State, which had Kimberley with the diamonds. So they created for themselves those little 3 Boer republics inside the country where there was much wealth. Black people were pushed out into the reserves where there was nothing, less to nothing, rain, nothing. They were pushed in all those. Go just like you did with the American Indians, Tucker, that you pushed them into reserves. They did the same thing with us. So those 3 republics, there were 3 white republics in this country. The Cape Province, which had Northern Cape. They had the Orange Free State, which had the Boer, and then they had Transvaal. Those were the 3 republics in this country that was united. Black people didn't have any part in those. Black people didn't have any say in those. Black people were just cheap labor taken from reserves into those republics to come and work as cheap labor for the white minority. That is a fact.
To one big South Africa, as we know it today, the borders of South Africa were actually drawn pretty much by the British in 1910. And the ANC were vehemently opposed.
They have a long history of border drawing,
yes.
I notice. Yeah.
You see this when you have these completely straight borders, and that's artificial. But and so the borders we have for South Africa today was a product of Western imperialism, and now those in power would very much like to maintain these borders because they have control. And so if we are truly anti-colonialism and anti-imperialist, we should return to a position where people govern themselves. We should rethink the borders.
You'll never be allowed to do that. I mean, let's just cut right to the no BS part of this.
We're never going to have those little republics again, Papa. Never in this country, Shem. You're not going to have your little Transvaal again, or OFS again, or Cape Province, or Cape Independence. You're not going to have that again. Shame.
That will not be allowed. It's never been allowed. You will need either to get to force, which I pray you don't, because I hate that. Yep. I hate killing. Or you will need the assistance of a powerful outside force that makes it happen. That's just a fact. Is that fair to say?
Okay, how are we going to do that? By invading South Africa? Huh? Is that what you want? The Americans to invade South Africa and force us to secede a part of maybe the Western Cape to them? Yeah, let's see how China will respond to that. And in other, America's not that powerful anymore, by the way. There's BRICS. America's not that powerful anymore. America can invade us, maybe overwhelm us alone, but we've got a lot of their enemies on our side. Russia is just waiting for an excuse to bomb New York or to bomb Washington in one nuclear strike. They are just waiting for an excuse. So they are never going to do that. Unless Trump is going to bring that apocalypse here now with his little puppet Elon Musk. Or is it the other way around? We don't know.
Say?
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to say. I mean,
right? So anyone who says, I want to kill you, kill the boar, you're subhuman. Those are not people who are going to say, yeah, go ahead and create your own independent state and not bother anybody, because you're going to be way more successful and prosperous than they are, and they're going to hate you on the basis of envy, of course.
Yeah, because you made sure that they will never recover for generations. It's not because you cannot do anything. If we're given the same chance, if these people got a chance from, we could have been the same as them. Exactly. Same applies to black Americans in America. They were never given enough chances. Like the white people were given enough chances to do whatever they did. So you want to be independent. Yeah, it's okay. Be independent, go away, be independent. But then in that independence, you are taking each and every wealth in this country that you have hogged for the past 10 years for yourselves. They are going to hate you again and they're going to kill you again.
It's already happening.
And we have to ask them nicely to make certain concessions towards us.
No, I get it's not going to happen. So what is your plan?
Well, I think the plan is to firstly to be well-organized communities, to have a very strong sense of community, a sense of pride in who we are, to remain Christian and have a strong faith, strong family ties and so forth. That's where it starts. And then
doesn't Christianity say love thy neighbor as you love yourself? I'm a Christian myself. That's why I hate this word Christianity. I hate it so much because it's just a word. It doesn't mean nothing to anyone. Christianity. That's why I'm a believer or a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm not a Christian. Because Christians created slavery. Christians created wars. Christians created apartheid. These ones. Christians created a lot of heartache for other people. So I don't like that. So if he says you want a Christian, be a Christian, it's fine. Because even if they're Christians, you know they didn't want us to be in their churches. Do you know there's still churches in this country, Tucker Calson, that doesn't allow black people inside? A church where you're supposed to pray to God. They don't allow black people to come inside.
Other than that, the second step, you might say, the plan is to just create certain realities on ground level. So it's one thing to say, we want more authority or more self-determination, but you have to, in a sense, create that so that what you have created can be recognized. There's no point in saying, well, you guys can have your own place, but that place doesn't exist. So I think what the Afrikaner people need to do is to a large extent build their own self-determination, and I think that's what we intend to do. But it would help a lot if we can get recognition for this pursuit as a legitimate pursuit.
So you don't think, I sort of just didn't ask you to pause, and I should have. You began this segment of the conversation by saying the current scheme, the current arrangement is not going to work.
Yep.
I think most people, certainly I as an outsider, instinctively kind of want it to work.
Well, it's a good story. It sounds like
It's a good story. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'll admit to being kind of a dopey liberal in some ways. I really prefer the idea of, people living together in harmony. I just feel that way. I can't help it. Maybe that's my Enlightenment legacy or something. I also think you should deal with reality, and I definitely don't think you should be allowed to kill people because of the way they look, period. So, by the way, how did these people, why did they go on TV like they're on the right side? They're like endorsing genocide. Like, I don't understand.
There's no genocide, Tucker Calson, in this country. There's no genocide of these people. They are lying to you, man. There's no genocide. There's no genocide. Why is this one still alive in front of you? When he says there's genocide, it's systematical killing of people. That's what genocide means. There's no genocide, man.
How they've been allowed to get away with being on Winnie Mandela's side and feeling self-righteous. I just don't get that. I think it's disgusting. But whatever, I said that 5 times. I can't say it enough. But how do you know it won't work? Like, ANC obviously is a criminal gang, totally incompetent. You don't have electricity a lot of the time. Like, it's not working. Yep. They're just stealing everything. Got it. Stealing the copper out of the wires.
Well, the ANC was called a terrorist organization before by your government, so you calling it a criminal gang is nothing new.
But there's not another political coalition that could run it effectively?
No. So you mentioned electricity. In Johannesburg, the mayor just a few days ago announced that people should just wait 7 days and then they will have water. So it's not just an electricity problem. There's a water problem.
So there's a water problem. So you're going to have a food problem.
Okay, let's talk about this electricity problem that they're seeming to be enjoying themselves, thinking that is funny. In the old South Africa, he knows, Enerst, that electricity was designed for white people only. Okay? After 94, government tried to give everybody electricity because it's a right. You know, it's not a privilege, it's a right. For them, it was a privilege because they were only giving electricity for themselves. That's why they did not build any infrastructure. It doesn't take 30 years to build a power station that's going to increase capacity. You understand what I'm saying? They built 2 power stations that has been sabotaged every now and then. Okay? Sabotaged so much that it created this what we call load shedding at the moment. All right? Because electricity was only designed, as I said, it was only designed for white people only. Blacks didn't have electricity. Imagine creating a company to provide 20% of people, not the 80%. Now, the new government comes and says, no, but you need to capacitate and give 100% of people this kind of service. How would they do that in 30 years? How?
Problem at some point.
Well, if the farmers are targeted, yes. So there are many reasons why it's not working and why it won't work. And well, everything you can think of points to that direction. One is just the data. As I said, like you can look at the levels of how crime is increasing, how unemployment is increasing, how government service delivery is increasingly failing, everything. I honestly, how health is deteriorating, everything except tax collection. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is just the extent to which people in South Africa are turning their back on politics. There's this political vacuum in South Africa, and you can see it, for example, with the extent to which people have stopped voting, how voters' turnout has dropped significantly in elections. People just aren't interested. They vote reluctantly, those who do.
If people didn't want to vote and they changed, they didn't vote because the ANC didn't fulfill their promises that they said. So they didn't vote for you or for any other party because they said, listen, you don't want to vote anymore because we don't see the reason for you to vote. We want to vote for you, but you're not doing what you said you will do. If the voting pattern was changing, they could be voting for the DA or for any other party, but they didn't vote for any party to show that they still want to vote for the ANC if it will change its ways.
So that's one aspect of
Interesting.
it.
Why do you think that? Because they feel hopeless?
Because they feel the political establishment is completely disconnected. They don't. It doesn't resonate with them. They don't. People vote for parties even though they don't really like them. But they think this is, of all the parties, I don't like any of them, but this one is the least bad, so I'll vote for that one. So there's a complete disconnect between the politicians or the political elite in South Africa, even the opposition parties and the people. And so there's this political vacuum that has developed. And this vacuum is filled, as my friend Ernst van Zyl in South Africa says, either by the good guys or the bad guys. It's filled by the bad guys in terms of organized crime. So we have these mafias and gangs coming to the fore with significant power, and to such an extent that the government is afraid of them. Or it can be
filled... Boy, that is the story globally, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it is.
The drug cartels are one of the most powerful governments in the world, and they're not even in government.
It's incredible. Yeah. So we have a construction mafia, for example. If you build a shopping center, the construction mafia turns up and they tell you, you need to employ our people or else we're going to sabotage your building and stuff like that. And it's a regular thing.
And you can't fight them.
No, you can't. You can't fight them. But the vacuum can be filled by the good guys, and that's well-organized communities who take control of what is important to them. And so the future is and that's what analysts and scenario analysts and so forth have been saying, that the future is one of deterioration, where you will have communities who will be much worse off than they are today because of the bad guys filling the void. And you might have flourishing communities because of good guys filling the void. And so that's another reason. But I think the most important fundamental underlying reason why it's not sustainable is it's a political system that is detached from the reality in South Africa. The reality is the distance from Cape Town, the south, to the north of South Africa is the distance from Rome to London. So it's a big country, number one, but it's not homogenous by any means. It's very diverse. There's 11 official languages.
Right. It's not just to restate, it's not just black and white at all.
No, it's certainly not. There's this Indian community, there's what we call colored community in South Africa, and there are various different tribes, you could say, or cultural communities among black South Africans and among white South Africans. So it's very diverse, different languages, different cultures. There's and now we have this political system that just says you have individual rights. And in some ways, the Constitution, even though it was very much celebrated when it was adopted, it was called the best Constitution in the world and the most liberal, most democratic, and so forth. The Constitution says...
It guarantees everything, but you get nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So we have what they call third generation rights, first, second, and third. It's a very vast network of rights that you have in theory. But then the question is, so there's this idea that the highest authority is the Constitution. But it's not possible for a written document to have the highest authority. The highest authority is with the person who gets to interpret it.
Boy, is that true, isn't it?
So, for example, Section 25 of the Constitution in South Africa, which the government is trying to change, it's a private property rights clause. They want to change.
Before you get into that, the irony is that it's the best constitution when it works for them, when it protects their little privilege. But when it now says people must now be equal, it's no more a best constitution in the world. You understand? Yeah. So it's just amazing how these people think sometimes. It's not even nice, to see such things, and then it is not nice at all, because this person is there South African, he's representing South Africa, and he's painting us with such a terrible paint. It's not like we'll be pariahs. I just wish that I can go outside. Maybe go to the US and someone just comes and asks me, is this true? No, it's not. He's lying. And I can go to Tucker Calson's show or anywhere big platforms and tell them it's a lie. Elon Musk can come and sit next to me and tell them the truth. Tell them where you came from. Tell them how your father is still living in this country that is that is killing like white people like flies. Tell them how your family is still living down there. Just tell them the truth. Hey, but what is happening there is a lie. Actually, there's no systematical targeting of any white person.
But currently it says the government can expropriate your property if it's in the public.
It's not property, it said land. Property can be a house, okay? Land is land. This can be a land. Property can be a building. They've never, if he says property, it simply means government can come and take your house for communal housing. It has never said like that. It's a land expropriation without compensation, not property expropriation with no compensation. Stop lying.
Public interest. Now, if you ask me as a Westerner, when is it in public interest to expropriate property? It would be something like they have to build a big highway, or maybe there's a military emergency or something like that. If you ask a judge who is founded in this ideology we've just spoken of, they would say it's in the public interest for white people not to own land. So it's a question of interpretation. You can have a wonderful document, but it boils down to how do you interpret it. And and that's why I'm saying it's not compatible with realities on ground level. And and there've been many lawfare in South Africa, many. South Africa is a very good example of political court cases, and we've won many and we've lost many. But it's It's a ship that is sinking. That's the fact.
Well, and it all seems fake. I mean, it seems like, and again, one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by your country is I think it's on a trajectory that I recognize as an American. So you have these legacy institutions that sort of go through the kabuki of dispensing justice, but it's not justice, actually. It's totally disconnected from justice. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
And you have this constitution, which is beautiful, which is, ignored. The only power resides in the people who interpret it, as you said.
Yep.
And so then you reach kind of the end point, or the most recent end point, which is the idea that whites can't own land. Can you explain this?
Yes, so they have been trying to change the South African Constitution, the property rights clause, to empower the government to expropriate private property without compensation. That's the buzzword. It's
just steal the land.
Yeah. It's they call it EWC. It's expropriation without compensation, but it's confiscation of property. That's what it is.
Well, how is expropriation without compensation different from stealing?
No, exactly. But
it's just shoplifting.
But what? It's flabbergasting to see the extent to which, again,
there's nothing like that. There's no stealing of anything. We are just saying land that you stole, we are taking it back for the people to use. That's it.
Academics and analysts and journalists are rushing to the defense of the South African government.
In South Africa there?
Yes. So here's one of the many bizarre things that they would say.
Okay, 1913 was a year that was passed. The Land Act of 1913, Mr. Tucker Calson. Please Google that for you, please. Let me just Google it quickly. That maybe I can be able to help, because it seems like you people are in a vacuum. They don't know what the fuck you're talking about. The Land Act of 1913, that was designed. Let me call this the Land Act of 1913 in South Africa. It says the Native Land Act overview. It's that Act of Parliament. Listen to this. The Native Land Act of 1913 was an act of the Parliament of South Africa that was aimed at regulating the acquisition of land. It largely prohibited the sale of land from whites to blacks and vice versa. Thank you. Let's go to a bigger. Makes provision for the restitution of land, of right of land to persons or communities depossessed of such right after June 1913 as a result of past racially, because the thing is, the Land Act was passed and it was deemed to say no black person will own property, no black person will own any land. People can be moved from this place to this place, and it is declared a white area. White people will just move into the suburb and stay there, and they'll build a very nice suburb, and then these black people will be taken out to Soweto, being put in houses that didn't even have windows. That's how the Land Act is. That's what stealing is called in that.
They would say, this is all a lie. You guys are lying. It's not expropriation without compensation. It's expropriation with compensation, but compensation can be nil. So it can be zero compensation.
So it's not happening, but it's a good thing that it is.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly
always,
it.
As always, right.
And so the president has just signed the expropriation bill in South Africa, which is now, which they now all...
He signed it.
Yeah. So And so there's still an attempt to change the constitution, and there's now a new bill in process. It was just announced, I think, a week ago, that they want to pass through Parliament, that says that 80% of, that's what it boils down to, that 80% of land or property in South Africa must be owned by black people. So because it says it must be racially representative. And
okay, so which bill is that? I don't know about it. And even if it's a bill that says that, what's wrong with it? I mean, you guys are already owning everything. So can just give us something as well.
I want to tell you a quick story about this because it sort of highlights the ideology. I was at a land summit in South Africa, and a spokesperson for the Department of Land Reform spoke. And it was very clear from his speech that the problem is white people owning land. It was a racial thing. It was very clear. But it's colored with words like restitution and correcting historic...
But do you not own land, Enerst? Do not white people own 73% of the land in this country? Don't they own it? I mean, you talk as if it's a lie. Who are those farmers who are being killed? Are they not white? You just said it now earlier that those farmers are white. They're prominently white, so meaning they own land. So what are you still crying for?
Injustices and highlights the ideology. I was at a land summit in South Africa, and a spokesperson for the Department of Land Reform spoke. And it was very clear from his speech that the problem is white people owning land. It was a racial thing. It was very clear. But it's colored with words like restitution and correcting historic injustices and so forth. And so I asked him at this summit, I said, so here's an example. And what would the government's position be on this? The example is a white guy owns a farm. The government takes it from him to correct historic injustices. And they give it to a black guy. And it's a black farmer. And maybe a year or two down the line, this black farmer decides he doesn't want to be a farmer anymore. He wants to sell his land. And the buyer is white. And now there's a white farmer again. What's the government's position on this? And the spokesperson for the department says, in that case, the correction of the injustice has been reversed. So, it's completely bizarre. And
well,
then
what's interesting is we've seen this exact movie, frame by frame, right next door in Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, which was one of the most prosperous.
I mean, somebody still calling Zimbabwe Rhodesia. It's so amazing, eh? Like a whole journalist still calling a country that changed the name a long time ago from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe, still calls it Zimbabwe. Can we call the US the way it was called before? What was the name of the USA before you people colonized it? Huh? And you're asking a hypothetical question. What if then a black person gets a farm, and then he wants to sell it to the white guy? The government should take that farm and give it to another black person. That's simple. If you don't want to become independent and you want to work for somebody else, that is your problem. It's fine. Give this to another person to continue with it. Easy.
Countries in Africa, one of the big tobacco producers in Africa.
It's very sad what happened to that country.
Well, it's shocking. But
what happened in Zimbabwe was that there was an agreement called Lancaster Agreement between the British and Mugabe, the country president by that time, that listen, by 2000 we will have receded most of the land or all of the land back to black hands. When the Lancaster Agreement was invoked, they said, no, we're not going to do that. So Mugabe said, fine, I'm going to take the land then by force. Because remember people who were fighting for the independence of Zimbabwe? They were told, no, man, guys, give these guys maybe 10, 20 years. Let them just, 10 years actually. Let them just, give it in stages. Then at the end of the day, you'll all have your land back. It's fine. So when they said the Lancaster Agreement is here, now it's our land, they said, no, you're not going to give any land. You don't own any land. You don't deserve any land. Hence, Mugabe took back that land. Thank you so much. And the Americans sanctioned Mugabe. They sanctioned everything the same they're trying to do with us now because the restitution was not supposed to be done. As I said earlier in the video, black life is very cheap. Black life doesn't matter. Black life is very cheap. Other nations, they got reparations. They even got a whole country. On the expense of people who were staying in that country, they were given a whole country. Say, listen, this is your country, stay there. But then when we speak about that, you are called anti-Semite. But then black people are not allowed to have their own continent again from the very invaders. And when we say that, we have people like this one.
Again, it's, like organized government-sponsored racism doesn't work. And I don't care how often the New York Times defends it. It's always the same. And that is like right next door to you. And you have a refugee crisis in your country because of it. And
well, our government, our ruling...
the refugees, they came because there was sanction in the country, not because land was given back to black people. Let's just correct that one. This crisis of refugee status that you're talking about was done because Zimbabwe was sanctioned heavily by the American government and the British government. So they could not really produce anything that they could sell because the markets were closed. That is why Zimbabwe is like this today, not because land was given to black people. Because land was taken away from white people and given to us. That's why Zimbabwe is like this.
So what do they say to that?
No, they say that Robert Mugabe is a hero and that ZANU-PF, the party,
his party,
is a good party and it's a liberation force and we respect them.
Okay, so again, no one wants to use the term, but this is genocide. I mean, that's what that is. It's like targeting a group of people for extinction, elimination on the basis of immutable characteristics. Like, I don't know what...
Yeah, like they're doing in Gaza. Is Gaza genocide, sir? Is Gaza a genocide? Let's hear. How come Tucker Calson now is Gaza a genocide? No, it's not a genocide because he doesn't want to offend the Jews. Sorry, man. But you cannot have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's impossible.
Is there another genocide definition I'm not aware of?
Well, I think you can say there are threats of that happening. There's not a genocide happening in South Africa.
No, I'm not saying there is. I'm saying that's where it's going. Like, what's the other endpoint here?
Well, yes.
You're not human. You can't own land. You should be killed. What am I missing?
And yeah.
Who said that? No one has ever said that. It's only in a little figment of imagination. No one has ever said that. No one said you can't own land. No one said you can't, what?
If you own land, by definition, that's illegitimate, regardless of whether you bought the land. It doesn't matter how you got the land. The fact
because of your race.
Because of your race, yes.
Okay, if we can't say that.
No, because of how you got the land. You came and you took it by force. What about people who are living in Lady Selborne, here in Pretoria North? What about people who are living in, who moved to Atteridgeville and the rest? What about people in Sophia Town? Can they go and say, listen, get out, we want our land back? Can they do that? Because they were forcefully removed from there. People in District 6 in Cape Town, they were forcibly removed, and then it was made possible, it was made as a white neighborhood. What about them? Can they just go and say, we want our land back, get out? Are they being racist? Are they being genocidal?
That's wrong. Then, anyone who can't say that's wrong, anyone who makes excuses for that is a dangerous person. I don't know what else to say. Put another group in there. I don't care what group it is.
So the ANC in South Africa wanted to, they have this process of name changes. And by the way, this targeting of statues came from South Africa. It's happening in America. It started in South Africa, burning down statues and so forth. So, and they've had this long process of name changes. And one thing they wanted to change the street in which the US Embassy is in South Africa to Fidel Castro Avenue. That's one story. The other one is they wanted to change one of the main streets in Pretoria to name it after Mao Zedong. And then some of the opposition parties said, are you crazy? Do you know what Mao Zedong did? And the response was, remember, Mao was never convicted of any crime. So,
but let's just be real. So why should I not name a street after Winnie Mandela Mandela? And why should I name the street under Hendrik Verwoerd, who created apartheid? Hey, I'll rather name it under Mao Zedong. He was not convicted of any crime. Doesn't matter what you say he did. He was not convicted of any crime. But I'm going to sit here and put on my address Jan Verwoerd Avenue, the man who created apartheid and oppressed me. But I'm going to be proud to put that man's name on my letters or on my kids' schools' addresses. No, I'd rather have Mao Zedong or I'd rather have Fidel Castro. The people who actually stood up and fought on my behalf. I'd rather have that.
Can I say, it does seem not only like one of the worst governments in the world, but one of the dumbest also.
Well, I think there's some explanation as to why the South African government has gone so off the rails. And it's that they've gotten a free pass for decades.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of this narrative. They could do and say whatever they want. They got no criticism or very little criticism or very careful criticism. And that's why I think they've gone so ballistic after the recent comments by Trump and people like Elon Musk and so.
Oh, have they? I'm sorry, I don't follow it that closely. Have they? Those comments were noticed in South Africa?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the biggest story in South Africa at the moment.
Really? And what are they saying?
Well, they're saying that the organizations that I was involved with at the time have committed treason. That we've been charged for treason.
You've been charged with treason?
Yeah.
For what?
For speaking, well, among others, for me speaking with you about what's happening.
That's treason?
In South Africa. Yeah, because it's bad mouthing your country. That's the argument.
Damn.
So I don't know if it was this one of the opposition parties who.
I
filed
wanted to
the
go to Cape Town for Christmas just on vacation. I didn't have time in the end, but
you'll have to put
probably
on shades.
Probably shouldn't go. Is that what you're saying?
No, you should come to South Africa. No, you should definitely come.
Funny.
I don't know if there's much will come from the treason charges, but that's certainly.
But you've been charged with treason.
Yeah, there were official complaints filed at the police. Yes.
What's the penalty for treason in South Africa?
It would be imprisonment. We don't have the death. We don't have the death penalty.
No, they just necklace you. It's informal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm honestly, seriously, I'm more concerned if the question is about safety, about mob justice in South Africa than the actual government coming after you.
Of course. So what does that look like? Well,
I think you reported on this in 2021, I think, when there was this massive riots in South Africa. When they just
In Durban.
And then
I remember that.
Yeah, it sort of spilled out to Gauteng, to Johannesburg to a lesser extent. And it's just people, it's almost like, smelling blood and becoming extremely violent and so forth. And then people join in by the thousands.
I've seen that with my own eyes a couple of times.
Yeah,
and it's really scary.
So a friend from Europe once asked me, are you not afraid that the government's going to come to your house and take your stuff? And my honest answer is not that much. I'm more concerned about a mob showing up at my house.
So then what do you do?
Well, if you are alone, you can't do anything. If you're a well-functioning, well-organized community, then the community, you can call people on the radio, you can get the community to take a stance.
It's so sad that people are living in their own self-imposed prisons. If this person is acting as if South Africa is this hostile thing, I've seen people having butler doors in their passages in the house. I'm like, I don't have that shit in my house. It's not like I'm not affected by a crime, but I ain't gonna put myself in a prison just because I'm so afraid of my own shadow. Okay, no one's gonna come to this person's house. No mob will come to this person's house and try to take it over. They're just painting us to be some terrible people. It's treasonous. They should be charged. There's nothing like that. No one's gonna come to your house really and say, "Oh, we wanna take over your house." I mean, him living in so much fear. Take Trump's offer and move to the US, brother, where you'll be safe amongst your own kind.
And I think that's one of the
So you don't get lynched.
Yes.
You got a lot of lynchings and stuff. I mean, that's, again, add it to the irony file. I mean, South Africa's like the world capital of lynching.
Yes.
Oh, I noticed. Yeah.
It's not so much white people who are targeted.
I'm
by
aware.
this.
No, blacks.
Yeah. That certainly. It has happened in the previous dispensation. It's still happening to an extent, not as much as in the past, but people don't know that it's still happening.
To people accused of crimes. And
it's partly due to the fact that the police is absent.
Right.
So especially in townships, someone is a rapist and the police doesn't show up, doesn't do anything, and then the local community just deals with him. That type of thing happens in South Africa.
In a very brutal way.
Yes. Yeah, it does happen in a brutal way.
Yeah. I've noticed. Like pretty shocking, like almost like I wouldn't want to describe it.
Yeah.
On camera.
I mentioned the necklace murders before, so we have that, and it's the same with the xenophobic violence. It's very unfortunate, and if we had a well-functioning police service, maybe that would have helped, but we don't. So in South Africa, we can check the numbers. I'm pretty sure the private security sphere in South Africa is almost as big as private security in America, but America is much larger. Private security in South Africa is more than double the police and the army combined. If you add the police and the army up together and you multiply it by 2, private security is the amount of private security officers in South Africa or security guards is.
Do you have the right of self-defense, the right to defend yourself and your family in South Africa?
We do have the right to self-defense. We can own firearms, although it's not as easy as in America.
Yes.
But you can do that. And you can get arms, especially through a private security company. There's some room to make sure that you can protect yourself.
And does it work?
Yes. In terms of the farm murders, we've seen that statistically, that in areas or communities where people are well organized, where they have radios, where they drive patrols, where they are trained, there's a decrease in farm murders. You can clearly see that. Actually, in the last few years, the farm murder numbers have come down a bit, and it's not because the incitement has gotten better. It's not because the police is more efficient. It's because local communities have become much more involved with their own safety.
Stop lying. It's because there was never a rife or a rise in farm murders. It's because it was isolated incidents that happened there. Crime incident, it happens there. It was never a systematic onslaught of killing people. It was never like that.
And so that's certainly one of the most important building blocks of the solution.
So now that the president, I'm using air quotes again around president, I mean, the whole system is fake, obviously. It doesn't affect justice. It doesn't improve the lives of its citizens. It's in no sense illegitimate government. And by the way, it's not the only illegitimate government in the world. But anyway, what happens when the government tries to put this law into effect, to try to act on it. The government shows up at your house, says you can't, you've lived in the same plot for 100 years. You can't have it because you're white. We're taking it. Like, do people comply?
No, people won't comply. No, that's partly why I told this story at the beginning, is the Afrikaner people and the farmers are very stubborn. This, in Afrikaans, we say hardkoppig or hard-headed. So this idea...
Well, farmers, you have to be stubborn to be a farmer in the first place.
Yes, and especially a
Why
farmer
aren't you
in
in
South
private
Africa.
equity? I mean,
Yes.
it's easier.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a common trope among farmers to say that I would rather die on my farm than to hand it over to the government. And so I think if they really try to act on it, which they haven't tried, there are land invasions in South Africa, but it's not so much the government, it's mobs and gangs and so forth invading people's land. But if they really try to act on these attempts at expropriation, there's going to be a massive backlash. And there's no doubt. So what they would say is, this is actually what the government says, that we need to do what happened in Zimbabwe, but without violence. But that's how they would argue it. And
They actually say we need to do what happened in Zimbabwe?
yeah. But this time without
That's one
violence.
of the worst crimes of my lifetime.
Yeah, well, they say it publicly. Yeah, you can find it online. And so the argument is, but we're going to...
What crime is that? Crime of giving people back their land? Is it a crime? Hey, my people are something else. How is it a crime to take back what you stole and give it to the rightful person? How's that a crime? God.
to do it a bit better. We're going to do it without violence. But what that means is we're going to do what happened in Zimbabwe and you are not going to resist. That's what it means. But obviously people will resist when they try to do that. There's no doubt about it. But I do think the government is very incompetent. You know, they have these very radical ideas. I don't know if they have the competency to actually go through with these
That's
ideas.
the upside. I lived in Washington, D.C. almost my whole life. And that was absolutely true there. You know, the local government make all these threatening noises, do this, do that, do the other thing. It's against the law to do this, whatever. And you just kind of people just ignored it. And
so there are some business organizations in South Africa who now use the term maximum appropriate non-compliance. That's what they encourage private companies to do. So it's a form of civil disobedience. It's with all these BEE, these black empowerment laws.
yeah.
To just say, we're just not going to comply.
I know someone who had a thriving business he built himself in South Africa. And the government showed up and said, you're handing half your business to your new partner who didn't do anything. It would just show up and collect the money. And it's just they stole half his business. Because it's all theft. I mean, it doesn't...
That is a lie. There's nothing like that. And even if they're going to do that, the simple thing is that you close the business down. It's fine. You're not going to, have your cake and eat it. You had a chance to oppress our mothers and our fathers. So why then should we let you continue like that? There's nothing like this of saying half of your business is now. No, that's a lie.
Like black South Africans haven't gotten richer in the last 30 years.
No. And the government owns the land, most of the land that they expropriate. They don't
Right.
give it to people. It goes to the government.
So
because
what
the
if you were
government
to
is the
say,
people.
no, how about no? Like
Yeah.
you have no legitimacy and you haven't been here any longer than I've been here. And you have, and I have guns too. So like, I'm not participating. How's that?
Yeah. Well, civil disobedience can be a wonderful thing. And we've had some examples of successful civil disobedience campaigns in South Africa where the government had this, they call it the e-toll system. It's like a big tax system on the highways that it's an electronic tax toll system but people just by the thousands, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands just refused to comply, to get the tags and so forth. And eventually they had to stop it because even though it was law, people just didn't do it. And the same with COVID. COVID was a good example. We've had a bizarre COVID. I mean, everyone has had a bizarre COVID. So we had these strange laws like you can't buy flip-flops during COVID.
Yeah, those are deadly.
Yeah, and you cannot buy shorts. And stuff. You cannot buy cooked chicken. We had these really, really bizarre COVID laws. It's a crime to buy cooked chicken or to sell cooked chicken during COVID. And so people just said, well, we don't care. We're just going to do what we want. And so there was a massive civil disobedience phenomenon in South Africa during the COVID lockdown. And so I think people have learned, and the government couldn't do anything about it. I think people have learned that that you can actually do a lot if you just don't comply with these completely ridiculous, irrational laws.
That sounds, I don't live in South Africa, but again, I have lived in Washington, D.C., so that sounds totally right to me. I wonder though about what you said when we first started talking about this, about the mob justice. That does sound scary to me.
I think that's a bigger threat.
What do you do about that? How do you live in a country where, like your neighbors could rise up against you?
Yeah, so we've had some examples of this. It started with the Rhodes Must Fall movement. It was the
Rhodes. Oh, Cecil Rhodes.
Cecil John Rhodes, yeah. So this one guy defecated on Cecil John Rhodes' statue at, was it UCT? What university was it? In Cape Town. And then they started this movement.
He defecated on it.
Yeah.
That's attractive. Well, that's kind of like the level actually that you're dealing with. Yeah.
And
just,
so they
shit on it.
They started this movement of tearing down statues, which eventually boiled over to America, and that's how it got to America. It started and it boiled out over to Europe and so forth. But it started with that, this targeting of statues. I think it was 2012 or something. It was maybe before that even. And it became a mob. And they wore T-shirts with slogans like "Kill the Whites," like on the T-shirt. And it became very violent and very overtly racist. And it was students running around just,
Another lie. Why didn't they kill them then? If there was kill the whites, why didn't they kill them? It was one boy wearing that T-shirt, not everybody. One person wore that T-shirt. One. Where he got it, we don't know. Like I said, people can just sabotage a good thing trying to paint it to become an ugly thing. So you never know if somebody maybe gave it to him and said, when I go as a black student and go and wear that thing, then it can make a very big halabaloo. There was nothing like that. Those kids were fighting for free education. They were not fighting for anything else. And they were trying to get rid of colonial past. Like John Joseph killed a lot of people. I don't care whether it's a scholarship named after him. The fact is a colonizer, he has to go. Unapologetically so. He had to go.
Setting things on fire, burning down buildings and stuff like that. So that is a real threat. And then later we had the Fees Must Fall movement. That was university students demanding that education must be free. You shouldn't pay to go to university. And it was the same thing. And now more recently we've had political parties sort of taken up that thing, this Kill the Boer and so forth. And so I honestly think in South Africa, the threat of mob violence is a bigger threat than the government.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And, that's where you get killed in situations like that, I think. So what do you have to be pretty well organized, pretty well armed.
Well, the thing is, there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that we can do to make sure that we're equipped to withstand that. But if there is a silver bullet, it would be, or the closest to it, it would be what I mentioned earlier, is well-organized communities that have a sense of community, that recognize that you have a sense of responsibility, not just towards yourself and your own family, but towards your community, and that you have some form of a communal identity that is under threat, that is being targeted, and you have to protect yourself. You have to fulfill a bunch of functions that the government is not fulfilling. Even though you're paying them to do it, they're not doing it. So you have to look after your own safety. You need to have a gun. You need to have a bulletproof vest. You need to have, or if you don't, then at least a significant amount of people in your community must, especially those who are more interested in this type of thing. You need to be well organized. You need to be prepared if something bad happens in your community, if the mob comes, if they set the shopping mall on fire, or if they come for people's houses, that in a very short time frame, you can get a whole bunch of people mobilized to protect their community. And with these riots in 2021, that was a good case study because some communities were completely unprepared and they were virtually destroyed. And some communities were very well prepared. And when the mobs arrived, there was a bunch of people with guns waiting for them. And
I saw a video of the South Asian communities in Durban. The big South Asian, big Indian community there. And I don't know if this is representative, but the videos I saw, man, they were not putting up with it at all.
Yeah, they were very well armed. Yes. Yeah.
It was like some heroic Indians out there.
Yeah, there was one, I think, some guy with something that looked like a minigun on the back of a pickup truck. I don't know where they got that, but
I don't know.
But that's an example. There was another example.
Is that true? These videos are all out of context. I'm not in Durban during this,
yes.
but
That's true.
So now you are celebrating killing 300 blacks in Phoenix. Wow. Like I said to you guys, when two white supremacists meet, they sit down and they count the kill. and they pat each other in the back about their kill. How in God's name do you going to celebrate Phoenix? As if it was something that should be celebrated. How do you do that? Hey, how do you celebrate Phoenix when 300 people were mercilessly killed just for being black and passing through Phoenix? One lady was from work. Her car was torched. She was beaten. She was killed. Innocent little girl coming from work, passing there where he was. I thought she was even staying in Phoenix, but because she was not Indian, she was killed. And these two stupid motherfuckers are here celebrating that. Ooh, this is not a good Tucker. Oh, yeah.
You got some brave Indians.
Yes, we do. We have some brave Indians. We do. But there were other examples. One was the mob was approaching a town, and the people were waiting for them on a bridge. And then they got there, they just couldn't enter because the people had just cordoned off their own town, their own village or community, and they weren't able to enter. So we've had some case studies of this. South Africa is a fascinating case study for a lot of things.
It certainly is. Can I just ask like a dumb question, a childish question? Why, if I'm the government of South Africa, it's like, why are you going after productive people for one thing? The most productive, and that would include the Indians, the Afrikaners. By the way, some of the black African immigrants, the Zimbabweans, these are some of the most productive people. I'm like, why not just live in harmony, actually? So wouldn't it be better for everybody?
Of course it would be better. I think it's because when they took power in 1994, they explicitly said, we are not a political party. We are not a government in terms of what people think a government should be. We are a liberation movement committed to the promotion of socialism and committed to the promotion of black nationalism.
No, you are lying. One, when the ANC took over power, they said, the Freedom Charter said, this land belongs to all of us, both black and white. Let's all work together. Let's push this rainbow nation. And your kind refused. You refused to be part of this thing. They never said they're going to push any socialist agenda and black supremacy. What is this black supremacy, what you're talking about? This black whatever. There's nothing like that. We never took over your land. We never took over your business. You never took anything from you. We left you with your things the way they were. Now, all of a sudden, just because we want equality, now we are wrong. There's nothing like that. ANC never took harmony. Tucker Calson is when everybody, who is busy pushing for their only African schools? Is it us or them? Who is busy pushing for self-determination? Is it us or them? Who is busy pushing for separatism between us? Is it us or them? It's them.
And that's their ideology.
They said that in 94.
Yeah, they even said that before 94. They published it.
So it's just, I know I'm going back to the same themes. I'm getting older, sorry. But I actually did know that because, as I said, I've always been interested and I knew people there. But nobody in the American press mentioned that. Not one person.
Yeah. There's a well-known book that was an international bestseller, My Traitor's Heart, by a guy called Rian Malan. It's sort of his autobiography.
I've read it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so there's one section in that book. I know Rian, I know the author. He's a great guy. But in the book, he writes about...
He's in English. I don't know if he wrote it in Afrikaans originally, but it's a beautifully written book.
It's very well written.
He's a very nice writer.
He speaks like he writes as well.
Oh, he does?
Yeah. So there's one part in the book where he talks about picking up the New York Times. And I'm sort of saying this from memory, from reading the book. But broadly speaking, what he says is he picks up the New York Times in, 1992 or something in New York or wherever. And there's two stories next on the same page. The one is about the ANC and Nelson Mandela coming to save South Africa. And then the other story is a somewhat smaller story about a guy being necklaced in a local community, a guy being viciously attacked and killed. And so he writes in that book that what concerned him was that the New York Times was not able to connect these two stories to each other.
Yes.
They didn't recognize that it's part of the same story. It's presented as two completely different stories.
I think they knew exactly. I think it was very obvious. So I was 25 in 1994, and it was very obvious to me. And I don't think I have any special powers of insight. I think you would have to be lying to yourself or lying to your audience not to acknowledge it. Mm. And by the way, it's 1994. That's less than 20 years after the Khmer Rouge took power in Phnom Penh in Cambodia.
That was while the Rwandan genocide was happening.
It was the same year as the Rwandan. It was later that year.
So it was the same month even. The election at least
was in July.
May.
Okay, right. Yeah. I remember them both very well, and I knew people in both places at the time.
Yep.
But I remember thinking, obviously, what happened in Kigali is in Rwanda is way worse than anything that's happened in South Africa. Thank God. But bottom line, when bad people with bad motives, stated publicly, take power, it's not good. So, I don't know. That's not hard.
Well, there's a story from Rwanda that I keep mentioning in the same time. I think Linda Malvern wrote a book called Conspiracy to Murder, which is about, I think she lived in Rwanda and she's a journalist, and she wrote about what happened. And she writes about a meeting, or it must have been a party in Washington between American diplomats and government officials from Rwanda in the run-up, I think, to the genocide. And it was just a big celebration, and everyone was happy because Rwanda was in the process of becoming a democracy. And then afterwards, someone asked one of the Americans, but did you not know what was happening in Rwanda, that they were on the verge of committing genocide? And he said, the American diplomat said, yes, we knew, but we were so excited about democracy and Rwanda becoming a democracy. We didn't want to spoil the mood by confronting them.
Well, that sounds like an American diplomat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
So that's very, very alarming, this idea of being so excited about a potential idea that you are not willing to confront the realities that's happening or that could potentially unfold.
Or being unwilling to clearly define your terms. Like, what is democracy actually?
Yeah, well, I think that's an underlying...
It's an underlying problem.
Yeah.
Right. It's a problem that's only surfaced in this country in the last
Can I give you an example of that from the South African perspective? So I mentioned the name changes. It's a big thing in South Africa.
I'm sure that'll fix your problems. Will that bring the electricity and water back?
No, obviously. So there's a town called Amanzimtoti, which is on the east coast of South Africa. The main street was named Kingsway. They changed it to Andrew Zondo Street. Now, Andrew Zondo is really only known for one thing. He was a member of the ANC Youth League, and I believe it was 1985. He planted a bomb in a shopping center, and he killed, I think, 5 people and injured 40. All of the people who were killed were women and children. That's the only thing he did, and he was a member of the ANC Youth League. The ANC regards that event as something that they claim as an act of heroism. So they named the main street after him. And so there are people in that town who drive to work in a street named after the person who killed their children. And
it's the same as I will stay in a town or pass on the street or pass a statue of Hendrik Verwoerd, the man who created apartheid in our country. Same thing. One thing for sure, the people in Amanzimtoti were never in Johannesburg that time. None of them got killed in that bomb. So please, don't try to take credit by association because of the color of your skin. Do not do that. But apartheid was designed by this person and everybody else, Pretorias, whatever. There are still street names here left that are still here in this country, that are still here, that are still Africans and all that. So do not try, and like you actually got to accept. There's Kruger, Church Square. The Kruger statue is still standing there. We are not taking it down. It's even protected by our own government. Because we are trying so hard to please you, but you are not pleased. You just can't accept the fact that we are going to be equal whether you like it or not. So whether the guy planted a bomb in a shopping center in Johannesburg somewhere and killed some people, it doesn't mean that the people who are still in that street have been killed by the same bomb. That's a lie.
And now they would say that they need to do these name changes to make sure that they get rid of offensive names. Offensive names are Afrikaans names, names linked to South Africa's past. And so I was at a summit where this was discussed. And I mentioned this. I said, so you say that in Pretoria, Church Street is an offensive name and has to be changed. In Amanzimtoti, you change Kingsway to Andrew Zondo. And I tell this story. And I said, so who decides if it's offensive or not? And the guy said, oh, well, that's easy. The majority decides. And so
it's offensive because, first and foremost, Church Street, ne? it's not a matter of it's like it's a church, like church. It's got its own roots somewhere. Listen, the fact is, there was colonization in this country, there was apartheid. I cannot, okay, take example, there's a rapist still, there's the rapee, somebody who has been raped, the R word, sorry to say it loud, YouTube, sorry. Do they still go and become friends with the person that did that to them? So why should I still be looking at Wood Street or any other street or say, oh, that's my heritage, that's my history? When I see these people, I see my father being beaten because he was black. I see my father being made a slave in his own country because he was black. I see my mother never been given proper education because of these people. So I should see them every single day. Is that okay?
Oh, but it's not even the majority. It's just the government. The government decides because they believe they are the majority. So we have these extremely offensive things happening under the banner of.
Well, they're murderous. I mean, again, I think the picture is really, really clear. Yep. It couldn't be clearer.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You're staying.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we'll stay.
You guys must love your country.
Yeah, we really do. I mean, in South Africa, everyone who's been to South Africa would say it's an incredibly beautiful country, and it truly is. And it's a country that unfortunately has suffered so much under this current government and has suffered so much in the past. One of our Afrikaans philosophers, a man named N.P. van Wyk Louw, wrote, I think in the 1930s or something, that you love a people not so much for their accomplishments as for the hardships that they've had to endure.
That's right.
And I think that's true for South Africa. South Africa has endured many hardships, and also for our people, the Afrikaner people, as with many other peoples all over the world, have endured many hardships. And it's through these hardships and maintaining our sense of identity that we really love our history and our tradition and our culture.
You can't.
What hardships are those, Mr. Roets, that you guys have endured? Because it was, if you talk about the Anglo-Boer War and what the other white people did to you, that's them and you, that's white on white crime. So what hardships are you talking about, sir? That you say you have endured hardships. Which hardships are those? Compared to what you have gone through. Like, seriously.
Came in the first place because you were an oppressed minority, correct?
Yep.
I know the French did.
Yes.
Oppressed by who? By another white people? Are you serious, Tucker? They were oppressed by who? No one's oppressing them now. They are now still having equal rights as us. They're still trying to beg them to forgive us, to be one with us, just to let us be. But no, they still want some exclusive things for themselves. How? Now there's this Vanuatu nonsense that is out in the streets. Where is only exclusive Africans? So is that oppression?
The French Huguenots, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It was the fleeing the religious wars in Europe.
They were getting killed.
Yes, in big numbers. Yeah. That's part of our origin story.
It's also factually true.
Yeah,
it's part of history. I mean, it's not a myth; it's real.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you think? I don't know what the resolution will be, and I'm certainly rooting for all South Africans of every color, but fervently. But I gotta think that being able to say certain obvious truths out loud helps.
Yes.
Do you think?
Well, the problem is if you do that, you get bashed quite aggressively.
But compared to what?
Yeah, no.
They just said we're taking your land because your skin color.
Well, the alternative is worse. It's just living the lie. It's much worse than getting bashed for telling the truth. Can I tell you a quick story or a quick reference about courage?
Of course.
So it's somewhat philosophical, but I'll make it practical. So Odysseus is on his way back from the Trojan War, and he has all these hardships, and he's trying to get home, and he gets told that the only way for him to get home is to face Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla is this six-headed sea monster, and Charybdis is a monstrous whirlpool that swallows ships whole. And the only way for him to get home is he has to navigate through these two monsters, which he eventually does. He decides it's better for him to sail his ship closer to Scylla, the sea monster, than the whirlpool. And a whole lot of his people die, but he reaches his destination. And so Aristotle writes about this in the Nicomachean Ethics. And when he talks about the golden mean, and he says any virtue is about finding the balance between having excess of it and having a deficiency of it. And so this goes to courage. And courage is a good example. If you have excess courage, you become reckless.
Yes.
And if you have a deficiency, then you're a coward. And so the point of having courage is finding the balance between cowardice and recklessness. And what's great about the story of Odysseus is Odysseus discovers that he cannot simply go exactly in the middle between the two. He has to be closer to the one threat than to the other. Because if he goes too close to the whirlpool, his whole ship gets swallowed up. And so the point here, and Aristotle says this as well, it's not to find the exact middle point, it's to find the appropriate balance between the two extremes. And so the one extreme is recklessness and the other extreme is cowardice. And I honestly think in the situation we are in, it's better to err on the side of being too bold than to err on the side of having not enough courage or trying to find some form of solution through appeasement. And so we make mistakes in the process, and sometimes you say something wrong or you do something wrong. But I'm very much convinced that if we're on this course and we try to pursue what we are trying to pursue, rather err on the side of having too much boldness and too much courage and facing the consequences than having to face the consequences of having a lack of courage.
I love that. I got to say, in a lifetime of travel, if I could just generalize, the two most impressive groups I meet everywhere, my whole life, around the world, both groups living in exile in large numbers, are the South Africans and the Lebanese.
Oh, really?
Yes. I've never met one of either group I didn't like and didn't admire. I don't think I've met one in either group. And the thing that they have in common is they live in beautiful, volatile countries that they really love, but they're very hard to live in.
Yes.
And so they're caught between that tension, cowardice and recklessness, and they're making that calculation every single day, and they're living so thoughtfully and so purposefully, and in such a, I don't know, just a admirable, noble way. I've just noticed that.
I appreciate the comment.
It's just an observation, but I've thought about it many times. Last question: where can people who have made it this far into the interview and are interested in what's happening in your country and happening to your group, how can they follow it? How can they be helpful? How can they learn more and be supportive?
Well, I think there are many ways. The one way is just to follow what's happening in South Africa and speak about it.
Yes.
Because we've had this incredible barrage of communications coming, just telling us again how wrong we are. This narrative is this zeitgeist in a certain sense. It's really like a monster that you have to fight. That you're not allowed to speak certain truths, even though the truths are self-evident. So I think one thing is if people just can help spread the message, take some interest in South Africa, because what's happening in South Africa is also of interest to the rest of the world.
I think it is.
In many ways, South Africa is the future of the Western world.
I know.
In terms of the problem and the solution, I think. So that's one. And then the other is there really are some institutions in South Africa who are really focused on building community-based solutions. And I think if people can identify these institutions and support these institutions, it really would help. And I think in terms of the US government, if the US government is willing to do something, as it seems that they are, I think the most important thing that they could do is a combination of pressuring the South African government away from these destructive policies, but also supporting communities, local communities or minority communities or nations, you should say, who are committed to finding some form of self-determination.
Amen. Well, Godspeed. I hope to see you again. I hope you'll come back.
Oh, thank you. I hope so too. And then I have to thank you for not just for this interview, but also for the focus you've been putting on South Africa in the past. It was
it's just so interesting, and it reveals so much about us. I'm American, and it reveals a lot about our leadership class, and I think it's important to say it. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, Jason Nelerona. Hey, Batamudimo. It's a king. Avara fetsa, Ravara. Yeah, like I was saying, when two white supremacists meet together and they pat each other in the back, that's what we get when we see things like this. When two white supremacists meet together and talk amongst themselves, that's what we get. I've analyzed a lot of this video. It took a long time, and thank you so much for taking your time and to go through and be done with me, as I believe you've been watching carefully. So please subscribe to the channel, share and like the video, and please comment below and tell me what you think, because I think I've given you my thoughts already, and it's enough. And I'm tired of but one thing for sure that I'm not going to apologize for is being black. It's being African. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to be made to feel bad because I'm a black man. I'm proud of this skin color. Very proud. And I'm not going to be made to feel somehow by anybody else who came and found me here. History always favors the perpetrator. The one who writes the events is the one actually who gets favored. But the one who's a victim is always being victimized more. If the lion will be given a chance to tell a story of a hunt, the lion will tell something different. But the hunt will tell you about his bravery. But the lion can tell you about what exactly happened before this guy can be able to trap me. What did he do? His devious methods. What else did he do to me? It's so surprising that we have people like Tucker Calson supposed to be so educated, we assume. But we have seen that in this country, the white skin is more valuable than a degree. So we might not even be surprised that Tucker maybe has only high school level education, but because he color of his skin and money, he was able to do a lot of things. Because him not knowing our history and interviewing somebody who doesn't know any history except theirs that he has been taught, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes, guys. It speaks volumes. It shows how ignorant some people can be. It shows how ignorant some people can be. It's disgusting, to say the least. But let me hear your thoughts and theories down in the comments. I love you.